Hey everybody, we are live. Fedora Friday, number seven. Number seven, right? I mean, hopefully I got my count right. Man, these things are stacking up. We got my man Josh. Josh, welcome back. Good to have you back. Thanks for joining us yesterday. As you can see, I'm getting a little bit more of the facial hair only because I don't have a whole lot of grooming supplies that I took to me. I'm still here in scenic Newark, New Jersey, and having a good time, seeing family, all my family, right? So my actual blood relatives, as well as you guys, my extended family. Ian, how's it going, my man? Thanks for joining me. It was funny because yesterday when I went over to Brooklyn to hang out with Morgan and Steve over at Bencraft Hatters, I guess I just didn't dawn on me that tomorrow I'll be going live again, at least according to the schedule, right? I was like, yeah, I guess it is Fedora Friday tomorrow. And I didn't mention that on screen because it wasn't top of mind, as you guys can have probably already told. I was all over the place, so hopefully, I wasn't a little too much for Morgan and for Steve there. I just get carried away sometimes. I had really a lot of fun doing that. Bencraft Hatters, man. Steve it was such a pleasure, right? Meeting both Steve and Morgan, because, well, I mean, Morgan, you guys already know, she's a moderator here. So I've interacted with Morgan many times. Steve, I haven't interacted with much prior to yesterday. I've kind of only known Steve by reputation, right? We're both members of the Fedora Lounge. And, Steve goes way back before I do in terms of the Fedora Lounge. And it was just nice, right? It gave me the same feel I got from when I met up with Steve Heck, right? And I'm like, wow, this is the guy with all the great hats, right? And it's just like I said, it's one of those things where once you one thing is to meet on screen. The other thing for me, I'm more of a face-to-face kind of person. At least I try to be, right? Like, it's funny because a lot of folks don't realize this, but I'm actually an introvert, I know that, I don't know. Some people were like, oh yeah, I get it. The idea of being an introvert is, whether you get energy or from social interactions or not, right? Or do you feel exhausted or energized by social interactions, right? So, for me, I'm somebody that will say, well, I'm socially skilled, right? I have social skill, but I don't really have social will. Right. So and if you really break that down, what it means is, if I had my druthers, I'd be fine just being by myself, maybe watching a movie and doing that. But when it comes down to interacting, I can turn it on, right? Because essentially it's really good for business, right? To be able to go into let's say a function, some kind of social setting, interact. And essentially, hopefully somebody leaves from that interaction saying, well, that guy wouldn't be too bad to work with, right? I like the cut of his jib or whatever they might think about, they might have been like, I'm not staying away from that dude. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not for everybody. That's for sure. And nobody is, right? It's like, it's hard to be everything to all people. So that's why, again, I always say I'm really touched that we actually have folks here that join me. We got Josh, Ian, and all the other regulars that happen to, obviously Paul, all the folks that kind of like, again, whether they're here every day or not, right? Morgan's a regular. She's not here every day, but Morgan's got a lot going on, And man, wasn't that show that we had yesterday? I mean, first of all, I had a lot of fun, right? So, like, again, I look out for me. I look out for number one, right? Not that I'm trying to be selfish. It's just that I got to make sure at all times that I'm having fun. And if I'm not, well, I'll just figure out, okay, how do I make it fun, right? I'll try to do a learning. But when I go and do these shows, like, I don't think I've ever not had a fun show. You know what I mean? I've had exhausting shows, right? But that has nothing to do with the fact that, right, you can be exhausted and just have a really great time. It's like I'm tired of all the fun, right? And I felt that yesterday. Not, I mean, I get like we did less than an hour show, but I felt like like we covered, right? And I know I did a lot of talking. I rewatched that show at my parents' house yesterday, right after I left. After I left Bencraft, me and Morgan we shared some pizza. I bought Morgan some pizza. Man, it was so much that happened after the show ended, to be honest. But one thing we did do is Morgan had to go to a class. And then we went and grabbed some pizza. Ian says, I watched it later. It was fine. Morgan is the business. Yeah. I agree. The thing about Morgan and I mean, you could have probably seen it in my reactions. She was speaking some real wisdom there. Right. And again, that's why, I go and I always, I always give it up for somebody like Morgan, because again, there's so many people that watch this show and I mentioned on the actual show, they're going to watch this show and they're going to look at myself, they're going to look at Steve, and they're going to be like, sorry guys, I just don't relate to you. But maybe, just maybe, they'll look at Morgan and hear Morgan speak and like, okay, I got that. You know what I mean? Like, just like we talk about like levers, right? When you go in any kind of like negotiation or any kind of a request, right? When you're somebody that makes a request, that's kind of my living, right? I make a living making survey requests. I try to get people that ordinarily don't participate in surveys to try to participate in my survey. I have varying degrees of success with that, depending on the tools that I have available to me. But the major idea is that different people have different levers that you can kind of implement, right? That may or may not work in getting them to participate, right? And I feel like this channel and just life in general, right? If you're somebody that's courting somebody, right? You're out there and you're trying to find a life partner. You're in the dating scene. That's what I'm trying to kind of intimate. Right? You're out there and you're trying to like, maybe you found somebody and you're like, okay, how do I get this person, right? You're trying to figure out what are the levers, right? That for this person. And sometimes it doesn't work, right? It doesn't matter, right? You can pull every lever and that person will not go out on a date with you. Or maybe they'll go out on a first date with you, but won't go out on a second date, right? And there's varying degrees of philosophies on that, right? It's like sometimes, well, maybe you're trying too many levers, right? Certain folks, you're like, I'm working too hard, right? I gotta work smarter, not harder. But again, the beauty is in the process, right? Like there's so many folks that I hear that they're like, oh man, you should see how and it's usually the guys, right? And not that's. It's just more often that it's the guy pursuing the girl. And you hear it a lot, very often. You're like, she wouldn't give me the time of day, right? And then you're like, then there was that one moment that I pulled, right? Like they won't say that word. They won't use that phraseology, but they'll say, I pulled the right lever. I did X, right? And all of a sudden, like everything opened up and we now like, we can't get enough of each other. And it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, to be honest. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things I'm like, I love hearing those stories. I never really get tired, right? Who gets tired of a good love story? Like nobody, right? That's why it's always in movies. It's always in good books, and it doesn't matter if it's not a real, right? Like again, fiction. I'm not somebody that poo-poos on fiction, right? If you make some kind of a dramatic or theatrical story and something that hooks me, I love it. Don't tell me the truth, right? The truth might be boring. Tell me something, right? Like I said, even if we're face to face and you're not telling me the truth, if you tell me a good story, I'm gonna love you for it. So anyway, but tell me the truth. Anyway, Shout out to Josh. Shout out to Ian. Shout out to Morgan, and shout out to Steve Goldstein over at Bancraft Hatters. Man, what a great shop. What a great shop. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I knew it right when I entered. I was like, it's kind of like, why haven't I been here? Like, I grew up in Brooklyn, right? You already heard Steve talk about how long they've been in business, right? So before that location, Steve and his family had a location, I believe in Williamsburg is what Steve mentioned, for 70 years. So that means that Bancraft Hatters were out there, right? And again, I wasn't a hat person. Again, I was a hat person, but a trucker hat, well, not even, I never wore a trucker hat, but a baseball cap person, right? So something other than fine hats. But it's always boggles my mind. Like it was, right? It's like so close yet so far. But the great thing is that I'm a hat person now, right? The other great thing is that Steve Goldstein is still alive and well, and like I mentioned yesterday, Steve promised to live forever, right? Forever and ever and ever, and the day, right? So that for just not just for my sake, but for the sake of those folks like Morgan, right? And the sake for all those future hat people, right? Like, you know how I view it is always everybody's a hat person. They just don't know it yet. Let's see some comments here. Josh says, I found footage of the original owner of the shop getting a hat tip from a famous rabbi. Wow, that's awesome. That's funny. It's like you mentioned photo. I don't think I followed through on my promise to share that roadmap, right? The hat. We had the discussion, and which we're going to continue, right? So between now and Tuesday, we're going to continue our discussion about the regionality, right? The festival hat versus the classic fedora hat. So I'm going to share that graphic, and then we're going to have a continuation. And in which case, we're also going to talk about the evolution of headwear, right? I look forward to that. And I'll also be back in my basement. I won't be in Newark, at least assuming I get back home, okay? So hopefully, knock on wood. But yeah, I love that. I love to see that photo, Josh, by the way. I love old photos, and especially hat photos. And yeah, Josh says, Steve, yes. Yeah, I'll tell you, man, that he's a good dude. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I don't even know if I said it on stream, but I might have just said it to Morgan. Sometimes I have like these moments where I think I told you guys something, but I told it to somebody else. You guys probably all had that. Right? Hopefully that doesn't mean like I'm getting too old, but like I had discussions with Morgan like prior to I met Steve, right? And the funny thing was, again, as soon as I entered in, Morgan was there. We shook hands and then we hugged, right? And then Steve, Steve saw me, but Steve was taking care of a customer. And again, it was a beautiful thing to watch. This gentleman from Mexico, an Orthodox Jewish dressed gentleman, like everybody, the whole shop was full with Orthodox Jewish gentlemen. And I'm got to think that that's a strong client base for Steve. And the gentleman that Steve himself, right? Boris was handling some other customers. Boris, you guys didn't get to see on camera, but maybe Boris was a little camera shy. But Steve was taking care of this gentleman from Mexico. And the thing is, it wasn't until the gentleman spoke, right, and I realized that his Spanish was better than mine. You know what I mean? Like, this gentleman was, like, for all intents and purposes, super fluent. And Steve was mixing in some Spanish as well, except, Steve wasn't like this gentleman's caliber. I'm not at this gentleman's caliber in terms of the language, but me and Morgan kind of interjected ourselves because essentially, we're watching the process, watching Steve do his magic. But at the same time, you know how it goes, right? When everybody always wants to hear or to get an opinion about how I look, right? Even if you don't want to, right? Especially if the opinion is you look good, that hat looks good on you, right? If it's that, especially, everybody wants to hear. Nobody's too good not to hear that. So that's what we did. We got Paul that just joined us.
Hey,
Paul, how you doing, my friend? Let me make sure that that I got I'm not hearing Paul, but let me make sure that it's because
I had you open on the on the YouTube, so I forgot to turn it off.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, it looks like I'm frozen a little bit here. 1 second. There you go. It looks like I froze. That's probably my Wi-Fi, guys. Remember, I'm still on hotel Wi-Fi, so if I get a little freezing, just bear with us. Paul, what a hat! What a hat you're wearing.
I just finished this one today. It's a 4X 225 Western felt. Fepsa, obviously, in sage green with the green trim. So I hadn't seen anything like this before, and I thought, well, a client asked if I can produce a homburg in this green sage, and I got the felt out, and I thought I got 2 or 3 examples of the felt, and I thought, well, I better make something just to see how the felt reacts, and how it forms. So last night I started making this, and I'm really pleased with the result. But whilst I was doing it, I was digging around in my cabinet there, and I'd forgot. I mean, how can you forget? I've got a Lock & Co. homburg. How can you forget a Lock & Co. homburg? And I've got that out to sort of restore. So it's a beautiful sort of older hat, and I thought you probably do see them over in America quite a bit, but if not, that's a very much a traditional homburg hat from Lock & Co. here in the UK.
Did you just get that one, that homburg, Paul?
I must have bought it 3 or 4 months ago, and put it into my storage area under the stairs in my house here, and I just forgot I had it. I mean, I've got probably 100 hats in the house, and I've just forgotten where it was.
Right. Okay. Here's the big question. Right. Everybody wants to know, especially the guys. Does your wife know how many hats you have?
Well, she knows where they're stored, but she hasn't counted them yet. So I keep telling her I've got 50 or 60.
Yeah.
But I've got, more than that.
This is when your style really comes into play and helps you, right? So if Paul likes his traditional look, right? Even though he has, right? Obviously he's got some lighter color felts, but when you have that, it can be a blessing, because now your significant other that may not be wanting you to buy as many hats as you do may not know the difference, right? So like, oh no, I always had that.
Exactly. I mean, but I think once I've cleaned that up and photographed it, I don't suppose it will stay around for very long, because it's a lovely hat. But it's a smaller size. I think it's probably it's a size 7, so that's quite a 56, 57 size.
Yeah. Wow. 57. That sounds eerily familiar.
I thought you might say that. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it comes up and see how we talk about it. But yeah, it's a lovely hat. Yeah.
That sounds good, my friend. Well, like I said, you guys know how I do this, and Paul knows, because we've done this process. I'm not gonna have Paul set anything aside for me. Whether he chooses to do that's one thing, but I always tell him, I like to play a fair game. So you guys, if you guys want that homburg, please reach out to Paul. I won't be offended. Trust me, you're not taking the hat away from me. If anything, maybe you might be saving me, from. You might save me some space. I don't know. Whatever you do, but, Paul has some fine hats. And if you haven't checked out his website, definitely do so. Actually, what I'll do is I'll put Paul's information on here, because really he's got some really great, right? So if this is not your size, if that homburg is not your size, Paul probably has something in your size that, vintage wise, or obviously one of his own fine creations, So. I gotta plug my man, because yesterday, Paul, did you I don't know if you caught it, at least in syndication. We did a later show, so I was a little worried that maybe it was a little too late for you guys over in the UK. But that's actually my fault, to be honest. But there was a story behind it. I don't know if I want to go into all the details, but there was a story behind it. You guys knew at least some of it, in terms of like, hey, somebody needs me right now. And, it was a complete, apparently several strangers that needed me in varying forms in the morning yesterday. And, I guess they didn't know they needed me until I showed up and interjected myself. So I don't know. I think it worked out for the best. Hopefully the person that I helped out over where I had my car serviced is a lot happier now and a lot safer feeling. You know, she just had an ordeal that I felt for her, and then I started feeling for the service people that were trying to help her out. So a mistake happened, and essentially people were sad and upset and angry and all the emotions. And, you know, as somebody that didn't have a dog in the race, I said, listen, I don't have a dog in this race. I don't have an emotional tie to this. Maybe I can use some logic and get you guys to where you're trying to go. Because right now there's just, you know how it is, Paul, when emotion takes over, things are said, things are done that usually people end up regretting. And then you always wish that there's somebody there, right, to kind of interject and say, listen, this is not productive. This is what you want. This is what this person wants. Let's figure this out, and then everybody can go on their merry way. So I think it worked out.
Excellent.
But the downside is that it took up a lot of time that I thought I was going to use to go back to my hotel, pick up my camera equipment, and then go meet Morgan and Steve in Brooklyn. So there was a little delayed, and so for that I apologize. But I think it was time well worth invested, and I think I still had a great time with Morgan and Steve yesterday. Wow, and I mean we all know Morgan, you know, and by obviously from Facebook and her time here. But wow, Morgan like blew my mind again, you know, when she was speaking, right? So I didn't know whether, when I showed up, I didn't know whether Morgan was going to want to appear on camera. And I know we got a lot of comments. I just want to make sure I capture some of these comments here. But first of all, just, you know, obviously Paul, before he showed up, he goes and says, hi all, you know, and then everybody says hi, because we're a bunch of very fine folks here. Right. So greetings, Paul. Hello, Paul. And, you know, so yeah, back on what I was saying, Morgan just dropped some jewels. And again, I've said this before, wisdom comes from so many levels, right? There's so many people that will stop listening to somebody that has a 1 in front of their age or less, right? Somebody has a 0, right? It's somebody who's 9, let alone 19, and they'll stop hearing, kind of the same way people dismiss people, maybe if they have a 7 in front of their age, or an 8 or a 9. And I'm like, wow, if you can't respect somebody that's 99, then, you know, I can't expect you to respect anybody, you know? So I'm like, well, that's okay. I'll benefit from it. And then, you know, hopefully because I don't have a 9 in front of my number, or a 1 or a 0, maybe I'll reiterate it. It won't be my idea. I'll just have listened to the person with the 9 or with the 0, and then I will restate it, right? It's kind of those levers I was talking about. You know, some people, they just won't, depending on who the messenger is, they will discount the message, and they throw out the baby with the bathwater. And it's a beautiful baby. That's the problem. It's a beautiful baby. Don't throw it out, you know? Anyway, Paul, that's a great hat. You know, this, again, this is part of the beauty of Paul on this channel, is that Paul comes on here, he's working on something, he wears it, it catches my eye, so I'm like, okay, on the behalf of everybody that's watching this, I gotta go and I gotta point it out. And then we do show and tell here. Again, this is what it's about, you know? Yeah. But Paul, anything else going on? What's new?
I've been out on the golf course today, had a terrible round of golf, but a good walk. No, apart from that, I mean, it's all just moving along, you know. But I think what I'm trying to do with these hats is take a little bit of a traditional hat and see if I can not go as far as the likes of where Nick Fouquet goes into really much a stylist and very fashionable type approach to hats, but somewhere in between that just gives a little bit of a lift. You know, like Brian Forbes, he puts a lot of lovely colors into his hats, but sometimes some of the shapes they're a little bit difficult for us guys to wear. You know, they're a little bit challenging. And I think, well, is there a halfway house? And the halfway house just might be, you know, playing around with the color trim on a nice traditional lighter color felt. I mean, in the UK, we're very much into our darker felts. And in fact, I'm really into green at the moment. I think some of the people here, the guys, Ian and Josh, are green as well. And it's just so nice, the green, that it's just a bit different. It goes with a lot of different colors. and it's something you can wear nicely with a pullover or just very easy color to get on with. But anyway, that's what I've been playing around with is how can I jazz it up. And the other thing is I've been remaking some of the hats, probably like Josh and other hatters. You make a hat and it's as good as you can make it with the things that you've got at that stage. But then you buy better quality sweatbands, better quality trimmings, and you then zhuzh it all up as you go along. And that's really some of the fun, is that you never really stop. You're always evolving. And
that's right.
I don't know where the point of arrival is, which is because,
there is a stopping point, but you also I'm holding to you that promise that you're going to live forever, just like Steve Goldstein. So you're not allowed to stop. I mean, you could if you want to, but there's going to be a lot of folks missing out on that beautiful process that you're going through.
I think I tell you now, I've said this to my wife and the family, that I wish I'd found this probably 30 years ago. All the businesses that I went through, I lost money on some, I made money on others. I could have had probably a hat business with a hat shop, and I had a whole production line, and all the money that I spent, I could have had a big hatting company, and probably would have been far happier. But I've just got to be content with what I'm doing now, and keep it within the bounds of what I can afford and what the business can pay for, and just enjoy it. And that's really what we're doing, is just enjoying it. It's lovely, really, and to come on here and meet nice people. And as I've already spent time with Ian. That was great. We're going to do it again before Christmas, and I hope that relationship blossoms, and he and I stay in touch and meet up 2 or 3 times a year or more, just whatever time allows. And hopefully we'll get you over to the UK at some point.
Oh, it. It. Like I said, I've been rewarded already, right, with my interaction with Steve Heck, right, and then meeting Morgan and Steve yesterday. Who doesn't want more of that? Like I said, I saw and I mentioned it before, the great time you were having with Ian on camera. And again, who doesn't want to feel like a school child again, right? Like this stuff, it's fun. Fun doesn't ever get old. No,
and it was. There are some. We didn't cover all of the hat shops in London. One that I would have been nice to have gone to was in Burlington Arcade, and it's the Herbert Johnson shop where the Raiders of the Lost Ark hats are sold, and that's quite an experience. They're all the different ones are in the window, and it's under this covered arcade, which is very traditional British, really. But it's just a lovely thing to see, and go in there and have a chat with them and so on. Anyway, we'll hold that when you come over.
Hey, that sounds good to me. And Ian made a great comment here. And again, Ian, you are a blessing, just like Paul is, and just like all you guys are here on the channel. Steve's warmth made me want to visit his shop. This is this echoes exactly what Paul and yourself, Ian, said about the folks that you guys met on your trip. Again, I know that this is self-serving and this is kind of like, maybe I'm biased, but I feel like hat people, like real hat people, are the best people on earth, because again, we know what it's like out there. Steve mentioned it on the stream. There's just less of us around, right? So Steve his family owned a shop, and I believe I mentioned this early in the stream, for 70 years. 70 years covers a lot of ground. He's seen a lot of changes. So he knows, right? And I'm sure that his revenues, right, he had to become a lot more strategic, kind of like what Paul mentioned about Lock & Co. You have to do these things because that's how you survive. Especially for an entity like Lock & Co., right? Like Steve is one thing, but Lock & Co. is a behemoth. It's almost monolithic at this point, right? Because of the brand and all that. So they have to be very strategic. Like they're not as nimble. But they know that they have to be a little bit more nimble. So I agree 100%, Ian, that again, these are things that, right, you don't stay in business this long, right? You're not going to be a hat shop that is able to survive the transition that hat wearing has gone without being, without having something up here and also in here, right? Well, whatever I think it's technically right here, but we always do this. But in here, right, inside, if you're not somebody that has mental toughness, and has a heart to match, you're not going to survive in this business. It's too tough. You know what I mean? Or at least to be able to support employees, right? So, I mean, it's one thing to do this by yourself, but, anybody, and Paul will tell you, Paul Brunt, he's had many businesses and has many businesses. When you get to the point where now you have to support employees, well, now you become kind of like almost like a dad, right? In many ways. And I don't mean to make this paternalistic. Women own businesses, they can be, but the idea is that these are my children. And to the point where many bosses will go and not pay themselves so that their children can eat, right? Like your family might as well be my family. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make it okay. I'll go into my savings. You go and you get your paycheck because I value you. I need you here. Those are things that I'm like, that's what happens in business, especially when your business is not, it goes through rough times. And you don't do that without being mentally tough. And again, having a heart to match. And when I saw Steve, I couldn't help, right? I saw the same thing I see with Paul and a lot of you guys, regardless of whether you run a business or not, right? Like regardless of whether you ran a business or not, you guys were part of a business, right? If you were employed by a business, and you know the difference, right? Like all of us that have had careers that span at least a few years have probably seen enough in terms of organizational behavior to know that there are good folks and not so great folks, right? So it's like the good or the OTG that I mentioned yesterday, other than good, right? If we don't want to use bad, we'll say other than good. And right, sometimes people that are OTG, other than good, they survive, but they survive despite that, probably not because of it. And that's really one of those myths that people, right, that the idea of the ruthless businessman, right? Again, I'm not somebody that has ever, like, I'm not a billionaire. I probably will never be a billionaire. But I do know that you can be a billionaire and do good. I mean, we mentioned here the story of John B. Stetson. And again, I don't know the man. I know from what I've read, and maybe it was a bunch of malarkey, but it sounds like John B. Stetson did a lot of good with some of some of the money he made in the hat industry. He was philanthropic. You can do a lot of good with money. So, this idea that if all rich people are evil, it's not true. It's not true. I mean, Paul, what do you think? I mean,
no, I think you're right. I think, look, in all walks of life, there are good people and not so good people. And it doesn't mean, whether if they start a business, I mean, it doesn't make them one way or the other. I think what I find in coaching a few businesses is that actually the bosses are a lot more giving and forgiving than perhaps they should be to protect their business position. But in the UK, and I guess it's the same in America at the moment, but we're trying to give back a lot more to the local community. We're trying to support the families of the people that are working for the companies that I'm involved with. And it's really because we want them to stay. We want businesses to grow. We want the people that work within the businesses to grow with the business and get back to those old values of staying with companies for a number of years and not chopping and changing from one company to the next, because you just don't sustain your growth in terms of your career development and your experience and your learning. It's counterproductive to everybody.
Yeah. Paul, well said. One thing I wanted to mention here, Josh mentioned, I'm working from home today and would love to join in. I should not, as I'm on the clock. Josh, don't get in trouble, please. Again, I appreciate it. But I will, if you ever want to come on here, meaning if I need to go and start a show on the weekend, I will do that. I can do a hat chat on the weekend. Trust me, I don't need too much motivation to go and hit the little live button here and then just to talk to Josh. I will do that. So don't get in trouble. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but and that goes for all you guys. Regardless of your situation, don't get in trouble. I love it. You don't need to do it. Thank you, Josh. And then Josh adds about, I'm assuming he's talking about Paul's hat. Love the color. I'm enjoying greens in hats. I'm working on an olive hat and just love the color. Yeah, green is one of those colors, and it goes with cars as well, right? For me, nothing really like I believe Toyota in the 90s put out a Camry that the sharpest color was like a forest green, right? And it had a brown interior. Green and brown are one of those colors, and you guys know from the Alpine hat, right? The Alpine hats, which tend to be green, right? Makes sense with the name. But like the hat I'm trying to give away, that's a Alpine looking hat. It's a Knox. And I just think that green, there's something to it. And if everybody's seen the movie Meet the Parents, where Ben Stiller's character comes to meet the parents of his girlfriend, who's the dad's played by Robert De Niro. He goes, Robert De Niro's character points out the rental car that Ben Stiller chose. He said, "Hey, it's green. They say geniuses wear green. I mean, choose green." And he said, "Oh, well, yeah." He said, "But you didn't choose that, did you?" That's one of those moments where it's like a father really like putting the guy courting his daughter in place. Like, it's like they say geniuses were green, but you didn't choose it, did you? Anyway, I'll leave that at that. I'm just that just popped in my head, so I did it. Let's see here. Ian says, my gray hat has the same brim height as my green one when I measure it, but it looks less when looked at. I find that strange and cannot explain it. I got to think that the ribbon might be part of it. Paul, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen that myself, actually, Ian, where I've looked at various heights and measured them, and I thought I could have sworn that they were different heights, and of course they're not. I guess it's to do with the block. The wooden block that we use for men's hats are usually very straight up the sides there, but some of them can be over a bit, and they're usually domed or relatively flat. Like the Raiders block is fairly flat, whereas I use quite domed ones for my other hats, because I like a bit of a material in the middle there to be able to make the shape with and what have you. But you're quite right, Ian. I can't explain it other than what you've just said. It's the other proportions of the hat, including the ribbon and the brim size and so on, that have an effect on the overall look of the hat itself. And it's just getting those magic combination of brim heights, crown height and brim width, and color, that really creates the look and the feel. And it's and I must admit, I've tried it on a few different hats and a few different colors, and retried it and taken trims off and put trims on. But it's part of the fun of what we do, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. See, and that's again, when this segment, this could be just Ask a Hatter. That's why we have Paul. That's why we have Josh, Brian, Robert Galt, and then folks in retail like Steve Goldstein. Those are the answers that you want, right? And I do this again. Some of this I might know, but I always forget. And then Paul's here to kind of add the extra. Again, this is why community is so powerful. And then I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't point out here that my nephew, John, just say, "Hey, looking good, Hey, Jonathan, man, I love you, man. Jonathan, he's this kid, I'll tell you. What can I say about Jonathan? I love all my nieces and nephews. I got lots of them, but Jonathan and my other nephew, Ethan, they have two old souls, these two folks. So John here, is in his 20s. And I feel like John and Morgan make me really proud, and Ethan, my two nephews there, and Morgan make me proud of what's to come for this world, right? Because again, John, I don't know. I know you wear hats, but I know that you're the type of guy that I'm not going to be surprised if I see you in a fedora or any kind of fine hat. And I know he was asking. So when I met John last time, he was in town. He lives in Arizona, and hopefully, John, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but we were going and visiting his dad, my brother, and he was asking about my Dobbs. I have a Dobbs 25. I believe it's a 25. It's a gray fedora really like one of the nicer felts that I bought in my vintage journey. And it caught John's eye. You know, he was like, "Hey, Unc," he calls me Unc, and he's like, "How much is something like that cost?" I was like, "Well, I mean, I bought this vintage, like secondhand. So, I mean, I can't give you a number, right? So, I mean, I can tell you how one of these would cost if they was produced today by somebody like John, like Paul, or like Robert, right? But I'm like, hey, if you want one, let's just measure your head, and I'll get you one, right? Yeah, your uncle will get you one. Like I'm like, charity begins at home, right? Like right? I just like I give away a hat to you guys when my subscribers. Of course, I'm gonna give my nephew. Like I'm here to create more hat people in my family and outside of my family, my extended family, which you guys all are. So shout out to John. Thank you. I believe this is the first time I've seen you comment. I love you, nephew. And, don't forget that. I hope you're doing great. I know you are, because I know the type of kid that you are. Shout out to you. Shout out to your dad. Say hi to your dad. Actually, I said hi to your dad not too long ago. But I'm here in Newark, by the way. Your dad owes me, meaning he hasn't reached out, but I'm here tomorrow. So it's not too late for your dad to come in, have anything with a drink or whatever he wants on me. Anyway, thank you, John. Again, sorry about that, guys. There was a little nepotism there in the comments, but hey, I'm a human being. Paul, trying to add coconut oil to the felts. It adds luster to it. Tested it out the other day, and the colors just pop. Wow, I never heard of that.
Coconut oil. Right, I'll make a note of that, yeah. Josh. I've not seen that before, but worth a try.
Yeah. That sounds like coconut oil is not inexpensive either. That's I mean, I don't know how that compares to, let's say, shellac, right, Paul? But that's interesting. I've not heard that, but I just love coconut anything. So I'm like, if it smells like coconut, you already got me hooked.
Yeah. Well,
So let's see here. Josh says, I'm going to rework my first hat I made for me. Hey,
that's how we all learn. It really is, honestly.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. And you're making yourself happy, right? That then, in order to be a good hatter for somebody else, you have to be happy yourself, right? If you got into this because of the hats, you also want to make sure that you make a little time, right? Paul crafts things for himself. Sometimes what happens is it starts off as his hat, and then maybe somebody else says, I really want that hat, and Paul will make a decision as to, right? He's like, well, I could probably make myself another one. And you get this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Although in saying that, this other open road that I've got here, this is my favorite at the moment. But this one I put up for sale, but it's it's nearly £400 because of the composition that's in there. And I got an offer on it, but it just wasn't. I just don't want to take a poor offer. It's got to be a great offer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would I want to get rid of it? Because it's these. You put your heart and soul into something that you really want to wear yourself, and that's Paul, you make a great and I think we've reiterated this point. It's just that the reason why, again, there's so many great reasons to support somebody like Paul, but when Paul makes a hat for himself and then decides that you're going to get the hat, right? If he decides that, right? He may not. You just bought a hat from a guy who made it for himself. Like Paul already uses the best materials, right? He used the best materials available to him at the time, and then that he's not right. He's not cutting corners anytime. But with hat, he's gonna put in that extra thing to make it fit for Paul. And then you get to benefit. If he says, you know what, I'll sell it to you. Man, what's not to like, right? If it's good enough for Paul, it's good enough for me. I know that. So yeah,
we got Jody here. Okay. Jody's not my family, but she might as well be. Jody is somebody that I met on my son's channel. So my son's a YouTuber. He's a bigger YouTuber than I did. I'll tell you that much. That doesn't take much now, right? Everybody's a bigger YouTuber than me. But yeah, my son was part of the inspiration. Jody is somebody that is a regular viewer of my son. Shout out to you, CP. Yeah, Jody, you're a blessing. Thank you for joining the channel. I know you may not be a hat person, but I think Jody is a people person, meaning she just loves people doing what they love to do. Again, I'm making that connection, Jody. Otherwise, why would she watch this guy here, this nutty older guy, when his much more handsome son, and probably a more, I don't know. I'm going to say my son's a lot more entertaining than I am, but who knows? I don't know, Paul.
Hey, I mean, you're entertaining, so he must be absolutely marvelous if you think he's more entertaining. I mean, look, it's just
thank you.
We wouldn't be coming back each time and just listening in. And
hey, that's
it's making life a bit more fun for all of us. Just talking about things.
Yeah,
great, fantastic.
Yeah, again, you guys already know my philosophy is I'm trying to build an online Cheers, right? We're obviously with a hat focus, right? But the hat's the straw man, right? Even though the hats are the focus, right? We all have that common thread here. Although, like I said, Jody has never told me, like she says, hey, I dig the hats. She never told me she was a hat person, right? So this is, remember we talked about the levers, right? For somebody like Jody, she's like, yeah, I like the hats. I like the conversation more. Right, it's like something got Jody on here, and I'm touched by that because that's the point, right? Like you don't have to be a hat person to enjoy this content. You just have to be somebody that likes people, which that's if you don't like people, I don't know what you're doing here anyway, right? Yeah. So because like the human experience, you don't like the human experience. Okay, well I don't know what to do for you. Maybe I'll get my cat on here one time. But Oliver is very human, to be honest. He's probably sometimes more. Oliver brings out a lot of humanity in me. So shout out to Oliver. He's being babysat by my neighbor right now, and I think he's having a great time. So shout out to Oliver. But look, this is what you do. Hello, Jody. Right? Like I don't know you, but hello. And then Jody's like, hello, Jot. And then Jody's like, hi, Luke, Paul, Ian, and John V. You see, this is why I do this. Again, I don't, like I said, I love hats. You don't need to love hats to love me, or for me to love you. And then we got Dark Soul Knight. I believe Dark Soul Knight is in Europe, but I forget where now. But Dark Soul says, lovely hats, guys. Absolutely love the open road and the newsboy cap. Looks like that is in brown leather. Actually, it's not brown leather. This is I want to say this is almost like a canvas, to be honest. But I understand why you thought that. This is actually a very cheap hat. I bought this at a thrift store only because it's a newsboy. I'm like, I don't have a newsboy, and it's basically free. Let me take this, right? Like mine. Unless somebody else wants it. Anybody wants it? No takers. It's mine. And like I said, if somebody else wants it, they can have it. It's one of those things. I'm like, hey, I'm just here. I'm the temporary owner of this hat. Sometimes somebody says, hey, I want that hat more than you do. And I'm like, oh, do tell. And then we come up with something, and then the hat belongs to somebody else. It's like, it's mine for now. Anyway, Jody, man, make sure to smash the like, and for Luke, again, see, this is why when Jody come over, and I mentioned to everybody on my son's channel, I said, listen, if you like hats, or maybe you just like me, I'm kind of a character on my son's channel, and also on my Mets channel, Mets Flicks, by the way. So if you want to see more of me, but I don't stream as often on my Mets channel, only because, well, I love hats more than I love even the Mets. Although I love my Mets, don't get me wrong. I love my Mets Fedora will tell you how much I love the Mets, but it's just we're off season. We had kind of a disappointing season. I won't belabor that point. What else? I love this. Again, I'm pointing this out because this is why I created this channel primarily. So hello, Jody. I'm from London. Ian, refined coconut oil. So Josh adds that it's not just any coconut oil. He used refined coconut oil. That's good to know because, again, we have other hatters here. If we want to make sure that we're not if there's any kind of nuance, hey, make sure it's refined or else. We want to know that only because, we all okay with making mistakes, but if we could shortcut, we talked about that yesterday. If we can shortcut the process for each other, let's do that. Jody says, I'm learning about hats. Of course, you're welcome. Also, why I started this channel. Again, my philosophy is there's a lot of people that are hat people. They just don't know it yet, or they're too afraid. They need somebody else. They need to see somebody like myself, somebody like Paul, somebody like Morgan, somebody like Josh, or anybody else that comes like Brian Forbes, right? They need to see somebody like that will pull that lever and say, okay, now I'm going to do this, right? And Morgan, man, if you guys haven't watched my stream from yesterday and you just want to watch a few minutes, and I told Morgan, man, I'm going to put this into a clip because Morgan gave that little bit of a blueprint, right? Like if you had to give advice to somebody that was 19 or maybe even younger than yourself, Morgan, what would you tell them? Because, there might be somebody that's out there, right? My nephew is not 19. He's actually older. He's in his mid-20s or close to that. And, like he still wants to see other young people do this, right? Unc is cool. He's like, he's looking good, Unc, but Unc is almost 50 years old. And maybe that's not enough for my nephew to do this. But maybe Morgan, when my nephew sees Morgan, maybe that'll be what pulls the lever. And he says, you know what? He's big into fragrances, my nephew. We talk a lot about fragrances, and he has his fragrance collection is ridiculous. He has a very enviable fragrance collection, this gentleman. Myself, I have 2 fragrances. And, again, just like I have, I do watch collecting, like very on a small scale. I collect fragrances, but I have 2. And I'm happy with that. We talked about yesterday. You may have 1 hat, and that's fine. That's cool. In many ways, I admire you just as much, maybe even more than a lot of collectors, because if you have that 1 hat, and you really love that hat, maybe you spent a little extra money because you knew it was only going to be your 1 hat. Who doesn't respect that? It becomes like the 1 watch person or the 1 fragrance person, right? Like I mentioned the Bruce Lee thing. I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man that's practiced 1 kick 10,000 times. Right? There's no wrong way to do this. Anyway, off to that. But Jody says she's learning. Jody, any questions? You're here within friends. Obviously, you have a lot of knowledge here, right? I'm probably on the lower end here in terms of knowledge base, but that's cool because as I'm learning, I'm trying to get you guys to not I make mistakes. You guys can make mistakes, and we're all friends here. So don't worry. Oh, Jody says I'm too old. Too. No, I'm old too. It's like you're not that old. I've seen you interact. And I know your age. You're not. Trust me. We got Rob. I think Robert Galt might be the oldest gentleman in the network. And Robert spicy as all get up, man. I love Robert. He's again very much like myself, but like Belfast version, right? Like he's Belfast Luke. And maybe I'm being offensive that way. You know what I mean? I'm just like Luke, don't compare yourself to me. You're no Robert. And that's probably true. I'm no Robert. But Jody says exactly. And then Jody says, I may not be a hat collector, but I do admire a nice hat if I'm out and about. That's enough. That's enough for me. Like, again, I think that's actually a lot more common than people realize, because a lot of people are worried about that person pointing them out and saying, what's that stupid thing on your head? And don't get me wrong. There might be somebody, I've not had it. I've not had that happen to me. The worst that I've gotten is probably from a family member to say, hey, why do you have so many hats? Like, I don't get it. That seems like a waste of money to me. That's probably the worst comment I've gotten. And that's not, I could deal with that. I mean, I could deal with a lot worse. I have a thick skin, but Paul, what do you think?
I think you just let the water run off your back on that one, because everybody's got a hobby, everybody's got a penchant for something or other, and in our case it just happens to be hats or nice clothes or nice perfumes or whatever it might be, and it's what makes the world go round. And I guess when you do get a little bit older, like some of us on here, you sort of get to a point where you think, well, I don't really mind what anybody else thinks. I'm just going to do what I feel comfortable doing. And if I'm happy with it, then it doesn't really matter. You know, you're not being offensive to anybody, and you know, what the heck if you spend your money on hats? You know, it's nobody else's business to know what you do with your money.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not asking you for a loan, right? It's like when I ask you for a loan, then maybe you can go and take a look at my financials, right? But until that time, that's my business, you know. Absolutely. And Paul's business is his business, or businesses, you know. I'm like, you know what I mean? So it's like, hey, it's like as the kids say, stop watching somebody else's pocketbook, you know. That's personal business, you know. And like, unless I ask you to, right? If you're somebody that's a CPA, I might ask you to. But unless I ask you to, it's like, don't make comments on that, you know. Everybody. I say, and I had this thing about Rolex and Porsches, right? I know people that own Rolexes. I know people that own Porsches, and I know what they face the same scrutiny because somebody's watching them saying, first of all, what a jerk, right, for owning such a thing, and second of all, what a waste of money. Like, who cares? Did you pay for it? Right? Like, that person loves that thing. You surround yourself with nice things. Anyway, I'll leave that alone. But Ian mentioned I just made a special perfume, which I do occasionally. Which essentially that's I do. I just learned that from Ian. I did not know that. I know that some people do that because a lot of perfumes that you buy, a lot of cologne scents that you buy in the stores, sometimes they contain chemicals that you don't want to put on yourself. Meaning you want something more natural because you have an allergic reaction. So I actually worked with a lady that made her own scents, and she made them for others, and she smelled impeccable. Like, it was amazing. Like, that's how she did her side hustle. She was wearing her business card. So she's like, what is that you're wearing? It's like, well, that's just something I made. Kind of like with Paul, right? Paul comes out in a PJ Murphy and Son, and they're like, where do you get that hat? Well, I make these. I can make one for you if you want. It's just what it is. It's like a personal trainer going out there and at the beach, and he's chiseled out of rock, and he's like, well, how do you do it? What's your secret? It's like, well, I have a thing. I actually teach people how to do this. Do you want to learn? You know, this is no different. Dark Soul Knight says, I'm from Wales. That's right. That's what it was. You're from Wales. Shout out to Wales as well, Luke. If you forget, just think of the place with mountains, sheep, and bad weather. LMAO. I love it. I love it. I'm sure that that's just tongue in cheek because, again, lots of places are known for bad weather, like Finland is known for its cold, but there's just so much. I want to see Finland, for sure. And I also want to see Wales. I met a gentleman from Scotland at the service appointment during that whole morass I was talking about. And that gentleman made me want to visit because he had a flat cap on. So I said, hey, nice flat cap. He said, oh, it's from the motherland. And I said, oh, where's the motherland? Scotland, of course. Yeah. And then we had a very nice conversation about just Scotland. And then, you know, obviously it touched on haggis and all that other things that I know about Scotland. Not golf. If Paul was there, they could have talked about golf because I believe golf originated in Scotland. But I don't play golf. But again, this is just meeting people, going out in the wild. I didn't intend to talk about hats. I just saw a nice flat cap. I acknowledged it, and I had a great conversation with a gentleman. Let's see. Josh says here, on perfume, leather, whiskey, and coffee. Yeah. Again, you probably hit on a lot of things. A lot of people are shaking. They're doing the same thing I'm doing. I'm like, especially guys. Guys got a lot of vices. Women do too. You know, sometimes it's shoes. Sometimes it's purses. Right. And that's when I think a lot of women and men can like really commiserate on the idea of leather. Right. Leather shoes, leather pocketbooks, leather jackets. Yeah. Yes, leather is one of those materials that, you know, I think felt is also, right? Felt is one of those materials as well. Like that feel of luxury. It's the human existence. It's not a man thing or a woman thing, male or female thing, or what have you. It's a human thing. we like to have comfort. We like to have nice things on our heads, around our bodies, and that's what we do. Jody says, "Hey, I just subbed to Paul's channel. I was wondering if he did a video. If he did a video on your ebony and ivory hat he made. He made it, right? Yes, he did. Paul, I don't know if you did a video. We did a video though.
Yeah, I think I did some. Didn't I sent you a short video? But
yeah,
I can put one up if I can.
Yeah, you can publish that, Paul. I mean, you don't need my permission. That's your video.
Well,
you just created it and sent it to me. But yeah, it looks like you got a request there.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Jody for pointing that out.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, look, it's absolutely lovely to get people subscribing to the channel, and I suppose about 4 or 5 times a week I get a message one way or another, either for some advice or some help, or that I have, the video has been very helpful to them. And that, a bit like your channel here, it really sort of spurs me on to do more. And actually, you do find times when you need a little bit of pushing towards what people might want, because you're not quite sure what to produce. But something happens in the day. Like, I've just found that Lock & Co hat. Well, I might as well put a video together of me restoring it and cleaning it and steaming it and reshaping it and so on. And then that will help somebody. And I'm a very big believer that I think the Homburg is a shape of hat that will come back over the next couple of years. It's just a beautiful hat. I mean, and if you're of a certain age and a certain way with you that you like wearing smart clothes and things, it's a real nice hat to get your head around, really. Yeah. Agreed.
And there's so much there to unpack, Paul, what you just said. I agree 100%, especially the idea right now that there's a trend of the distressed hat, right? Right. Do you see that trend about the festival hats, right? And then the distressed hats. We saw from the movie Lawless that the distressed Homburg is still very regal. It's very beautiful still on Jack Bondurant's head. If you haven't seen that movie, you could see my video on the movie, or you could just go watch the movie Lawless. Josh recommended it. Ian seconded it. I did it on the previous Fedora Friday, and Jack Bondurant, played by Shia LaBeouf, wore a distressed Homburg, and it still looked good. Still look good with a big hole in the middle. It looked great. Yeah. I what else can you say, right? Other than like that hat, I've never seen a Homburg look bad.
No.
Yeah. But don't send one in an envelope, please. If Paul buys a Homburg from you, or I buy a Homburg for you, please don't send it in an envelope.
it does happen. I mean, you'd be surprised, Anyway.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure we got Jody giving a thumbs up. Jody says yes, thank you, Paul, for wanting to put up that video. So it looks like, again, Paul's channel is bigger than my channel, but he's still a relatively small YouTuber. The nice thing about being nimble like that, his business is nimble, his YouTube channel is nimble. You have a bigger voice now with our channels because, well, we don't have as many voices competing for our attention. So when you make a comment like that, of course we're gonna try to meet that need of yours, because, well, we need the motivation. Like Paul mentioned, even though we're self-motivated, we're not beyond, right? We're human beings, and we want to have both self-motivation, internal motivation, as well as external motivation. And you guys get to benefit from that, because I'm going to come at it with a lot more gusto when I know that somebody wants to see it. Dark Knight Soul said that he subscribed to Paul's channel. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Again, this gentleman, Paul, is somebody that you don't need to hear Paul speak for very long to know that he gets it. Kind of like Steve Goldstein gets it. Kind of like a lot of the gentlemen that have find, and females, right? Like shout out to Morgan. Morgan gets it too. Trust me. I learned that every single time I talk to Morgan. Morgan gets it. So yeah. All right. You thank you, Dark Soul Knight. Hey, you know what? It is over an hour. Let's talk about this movie here. This little movie called The Godfather, huh? Godfather Part II. So you guys can feel free to keep commenting, but I'm gonna go into this slideshow here. And Paul, right? You stay as long as you need to. I know you always got something going on, but I want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time.
I might come off and listen whilst I'm doing other bits.
Okay, yeah.
I'll catch
Okay,
up
that
with you
sounds
later.
good. Paul,
Yeah.
thank you so much, my friend.
You're very welcome. Cheers.
All right, cheers. Paul John Murphy, ladies and gentlemen. That man is fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Let me again, for you guys that have subscribed to his channel, thank you so much. Again, I can't make you guys do anything you don't want to do. The fact that you guys voluntarily do that, man, you guys get it. So it's one of those things where it makes me really happy. So thank you guys. Yeah, Jody's like, great movie. Yeah, what can be said, right? There's nothing that I can say about The Godfather Part II that you guys maybe not already known, right? But again, I'm somebody that I'm okay with repetition. What I want to kind of do is just, exactly. Later, Paul. Shout out to Paul. I learned so much from him. It's one of those, like I said, I'm blessed. Godfather Part II, man. Again, this may be shorter than I even thought it was going to be. But I'm getting really into this Chat GPT only because it takes a lot of the work, right? The brunt work. I'm a researcher by trade. I can do this myself. But I like to free myself up to do a little bit more thoughtful analysis of the movie, right? And I already did the original Godfather. I think the original Godfather might be my very first Fedora Friday, right? I think Fedora Friday #1. So probably if my math is mathing, almost 2 months ago, right? So it's like, this is week 7, and I did that so it's about a month and a half ago. I did the Godfather, the original. And this is one of those things, and again, you're going to get varying levels of opinions here. Excuse me. Today's was a day that I actually did have breakfast because in the hotel there's free breakfast, and I'm not opposed to free food, right? So I got my water. This is not coffee. This is actually water in here. I already have my coffee for the day. I'm switched to water, so I'm gonna try to do this without having a conniption. But wow, The Godfather 1, The Godfather 2. There's so much back and forth about what's superior, right? The fact that there's even a conversation says everything you need to know about The Godfather Part II. But this is one of those things where I go back and forth even myself. But I'm in the camp of The Godfather Part II is superior. And ChatGPT, I think, did a really good job about, like, at least some of the facts about The Godfather Part II that I tend to think make it superior to the original, right? Let's just go here to that. Let's go right here to what it says. Creative control, right? If you don't, like, and I mentioned this before, The Godfather 1 was a movie that was done under a lot of duress, right? Francis Ford Coppola was essentially a nobody. He was broke, right? He was brought in to work with Mario Puzo, who was not a screenwriter, right? So there was so much on the line, right? For Paramount Studios, who was the production company behind The Godfather. And if you really want, there's a movie series, sorry, not a movie series, but a TV series, and I forget who produced it. I want to say maybe it was Hulu. But I could be wrong. It could have been Amazon. It could have been Netflix. But there's a TV series that talked about the making, right? The making of The Godfather, right? And it's a dramatized version of what was going on. So if you want a little bit of behind the scenes on the making of the original Godfather, as well as the influence of organized crime, right? So Joe Colombo, the Colombo family, as well as Russell Buffalino, right? They were involved in that movie. I don't think they talked about Russell Buffalino, right? Where I mentioned Russell Buffalino, who was, immortalized by Joe Pesci in The Irishman. So Russell Buffalino was definitely involved, but more so Joe Colombo. And I could probably do a whole show on Joe Colombo, not because he's necessarily a hat guy, although I think he was. but because he's such a character, right? It's like there was so much to unpack with that gentleman, but I won't go into it. If you want to hear a little bit about Joe Colombo, you can go to a gentleman, Michael Francesi, who Michael Francesi is a YouTuber, very big YouTuber, has millions of followers, and you can go because he worked for Joe Colombo, meaning he was there when Joe Colombo was shot, right? So he was a capo in the Colombo family. No longer in organized crime. He's a YouTuber. He's a businessman, and he's got a lot of great content, right? Can be a little bit more religious leaning for some people, right? Some people are not really amenable to that. I don't mind it. I think there's a lot of wisdom that he has to share, right? Because you guys know how I am. I look for wisdom in all angles, right? For somebody like Michael, I think he actually has a lot of legitimate wisdom, right? Like I think a lot of people look at him as somebody that has wisdom, right? Because first of all, right, he had a leadership role in an organization, right? The Colombo family, regardless of what you think, was an organization, right? And potentially is, right? I don't know. My guess is it still is, right? But in that organization, right, as opposed to the organizations that Luke worked at or that Paul runs and worked at before, or Ian, right? When you make a mistake in a regular organization, you get a pink slip, right? You go, hey, pack your boxes, you go home and you get another job. Well, when you make a mistake in an organization like the Colombo family or the Bonanno family or the Lucchese family, right, or the Gambino family, or the Genovese family, right, or the Cavalcanti family, or the Buffalino family, right, or the Chicago outfit. You guys know where I'm going with this. When you make a mistake there, you may not go home, right? You may go to someplace else, but not home. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about. So that's the reason why I listen to guys that especially guys that were in that former life, more so than the guys that are currently in that life, right? If you're a former member of that life, you got my attention only because not because I want to hear about how many guys you killed or all the nasty things that you did, right? I want to hear about the story of, well, what got you out of that life, right? What do you give? What are the advice that you have for people that are thinking about joining that life, right? Not to glorify it, like Michael says. I'm not here to glorify that life. I'm here to talk about it and use it as my vehicle to get your attention so that I can give you a better message, either about religion or about politics or about just family, right? Because it is family, right? Right? The Godfather is about family, right? I mentioned this before. People are talk about like all the gangsterism, but I see a story about family and about organizational dynamics, right? So yeah. Anyway, back to the talk here. Godfather 1 was studio dominated, right? It was right. It was something that Paramount, right? It had a lot of control over, right? They were like, okay, we don't like Al Pacino, right? Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo had a fight for Al Pacino. We don't like Marlon Brando. He's a troublemaker. Right? He's a guy, first of all, he's a has-been too, right? Like Marlon Brando at the time, when he was going to do The Godfather 1, he was an outcast, right? He was somebody that was like, we don't work with that guy. One, he wants too much money, and two, he's a troublemaker. And he did cause a little bit of turmoil, right? So if you watch that show that I mentioned, you will see Marlon Brando and the kind of the character that he was. He was a little bit of a rabble rouser, right? There's a lot of terms for it. He was high maintenance, right? If he was like a person that you were dating, Michael Brando, if you were dating Marlon Brando, you'd be like, he's high maintenance, right? If you want to be nice about it. But the nice thing is, it was a success. The Godfather 1 was a resounding success. So regardless of all the politics and all of that, it was a resounding success. And then now Ford Coppola had carte blanche, more or less, with Godfather Part II. Puzo and Coppola were like, hey guys, sorry about, it's like Paramount's like, sorry, not sorry. Now you have twice the budget, right? It's like if you did what you did with like, I don't know, what was it, $7 million, it says right here, the budget, right? We're going to give you $13 million, right? And if you need more, like, you let us know, right? Like, Coppola like got to like pull all the levers, right? And with that, now all of a sudden all the problems, right? He didn't have. I don't think Joe Colombo what like had as heavy of influence on Godfather 2. I could be wrong. I don't know the answer to that. Right? So there was a lot of less politics and strife involved with the making of Godfather 2. So that really opened up the artistry that showed up in Godfather Part 2, right? Let's talk about the structure here, right? And you guys know this, but this is the benefit of ChatGPT. Godfather 1 was very linear in structure, right? One story, linear. Godfather 2 was a lot more complex, right? It kind of goes, and it was like going back and forth, right? Because essentially it's a dual story, right? We're looking at the origin story of Vito Corleone, right? Right. So Godfather 1 talks about the descent of Vito Corleone, right? Right. The ascent of Michael Corleone and the descent of Vito Corleone and everything in between, right? Godfather 2 touched on essentially two aspects, right? For two gentlemen, right? Kind of the opposite. The ascent of Vito Corleone and the beginning of the end for Michael Corleone, right? That's kind of the way when we end off in Godfather Part 2, we're really talking about Michael Corleone's on his way, like he's losing it, right? Like he's made the ultimate thing. You guys know what I'm talking about. You don't come here not expecting spoilers, right? The beginning of the end for Michael Corleone, right, was in the murder of his own brother, right? This is a very Greek tale. Right? It's a Greek tragedy, right? That's how another layer of beauty in the Godfather movies is that it has a very Greek tragedy kind of nuance to it. And of course, Michael ends up killing his brother. That's what you would expect in something like a Greek tragedy. So that right there, right? When we start getting into Godfather 3, even though they kind of screwed it up a little bit, right? I don't hate Godfather 3, but everybody I think is correct that Godfather Part 3 doesn't hold a candle. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Maybe I'll cover that in a different Fedora Friday. I think it's a worthy movie to cover, but it doesn't hold a candle to 1 or 2. And I think everybody's kind of in agreement to that. But the idea is that we see the ascent of Vito, right? And you now, right? Remember we mentioned yesterday during our talk with Steve and Morgan, we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And this is the story that he's part of the story that Puzo and Coppola were trying to tell here is that of course Michael is a badass. Look what his father went through, right? Michael stands on the shoulders of Vito, right? And everything Vito had to go through. So let me tell you that story. Let me tell you how Vito came to be. It's a very beautifully done. And shout out to Robert De Niro, man. Wow. You think Al Pacino killed it. De Niro stole the show, right? Like, again, something that everybody's come to expect, right? We know De Niro now, partly because of Raging Bull and his portrayal of young Vito Corleone and Taxi Driver and all the other movies that you guys know, Irishman, all that, like everybody knows about. I don't need to go and big up Robert De Niro. You guys already know, right? Regardless of how you feel about Robert De Niro, the person, right? Because of his politics, right? I don't get into that because I don't like that stuff. I don't care about his politics, and I don't care about your politics. Again, you believe what you want to believe. I don't care. You know what I mean? Not that I don't care because I care about you as a person, but it doesn't make you a better or worse person in my eyes about who you vote into office and what you feel about celebrities and their political views. Again, I know people on both sides of the spectrum, the political spectrum, and I know good people and I know not so, right? Good and OTG, other than good, right? So it's like, it makes one lick of difference about what about how I feel about you. Anyway, the tones. This is the part that ChatGPT captured that I was going to talk about that I'm really, really happy about. There's a tonal or a tonality difference in the way the movies were shot, right? Let me just tell you that I think in not knowing about cinematography, I'm going to have to just use the words that ChatGPT used. The tone of Godfather 1 was golden warmth, operatic, The Godfather 2 was cold, introspective, and tragic, right? And you know, tragic obviously is a word that's used purposefully because of what happened, right? Right. There's tragedy in Godfather 1, right? Right. The Apollonia, right? Vito, Michael Corleone's first wife is murdered, right? Like there's betrayal throughout all this series, but you know, the tragedy that is the murder of Fredo Corleone at the behest of his younger brother, Michael, is like, again, it happens at the end of the movie of part 2. And it's kind of like, holy cow, what happened, Michael? Like, you know what I mean? You had such hope for this guy, and then he ends up doing that, right? And like, anyway, even when his sister begged him, please leave your brother alone, right? Like, just do me a favor, do it for mom, do it for whatever, right? Like, so essentially, anyway, I won't go into that. Like I said, it's not my favorite aspect, but it's a very real aspect of Michael Corleone and the complexity of that character, right? So like sometimes characters that you root for sometimes, right? You want Michael to win. You want him to go legitimate. You want him to stay with Kay forever and ever and ever in a day, right? Kind of like I want Steve Goldstein and Mike and Paul and all you guys to live forever, right? But it's kind of like, no, it would be an injustice, I guess, all right, to not try to, right? Like this is when somebody like Quentin Tarantino really gets into, right, a movie character, right? I think Tarantino has a really good grasp of like why you can't have somebody like Michael Corleone just, well, not do something like that, right? Because otherwise he'd just become too heroic, right? Even though he does weird and crazy things, we would celebrate him a little too much, right? We kind of have to have that extra thing. Oh, and he also killed his brother because his brother betrayed him, right? Again, I know a lot of people feel different ways about that. In the end, I'm like, that's his brother, right? I'm kind of in the camp of, well, you didn't have to kill him, right? I mean, the guy, right? And again, somebody else would be like, no, he was justified. You know what I mean? Somebody else will look at Michael's actions and be like, yep. And that probably, again, this is what art does, right? Art is something that makes you think about what would you do, right? And what would you go through if you were put in that situation? I don't know what I would go through, honestly, right? That's why I like it that it's cinema, right? Not my actual life, right? I do not want to be somebody like Michael Corleone. I don't want to be even Vito Corleone, right? I wouldn't get in that line of business, right? It's just too much. There's too much betrayal and too much complexity. I'm a simple man, right? I'm very complex in my simplicity, right? I don't have the bandwidth to deal with a life like that. But luckily, I don't have to. You know, I can kind of like my life is complex enough, or as simple enough as, and I like it just the way it is, right? So anyway, the cinematography. This is another thing, right? The cinematography, classic darkness in the Godfather, right? And the Godfather 2, it says symbolic contrast. And here's where maybe I'll go and maybe a little. I want to get a little bit nuance into here, like, and it might cover this a little bit later. I believe I'm probably stealing my own thunder. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll wait. Let me wait on that because I feel like this is the part that I knew going into this that I wanted to talk about. But I'll not steal my own thunder here. But locations, right? Godfather 1, because, and again, it says New York and Sicily. They had to fight, like, right? And I mentioned everything was a fight with Paramount, right? Puzo and Ford Coppola had to fight for the Godfather 1 to go out to Sicily, right? Because they were like, that's expensive. Let's just pretend. Let's do it in the studio and pretend that it's Sicily. They were like, no, we can't do that. And like you watch The Godfather 1 and you see that part of when Michael's walking through Sicily, you see the mountains, you're like, holy cow, of course they had to do that, right? They could have skipped that. You know, this is when somebody like Puzo and somebody like Coppola has to have the vision and have to fight. And fight they did. And they went to Sicily. They had problems filming in Sicily, right? Because there was a real organized crime presence in Corleone where they tried to originally film, but it got too hairy. The show that I mentioned earlier goes into that. right? They really were accosted by members of organized crime in Sicily. And here's a little like tidbit that I don't know if it means anything. Like it gives you an idea of like the difference between the Sicilian mob in Sicily, right, versus organized crime in the U.S. At some point in the U.S., organized crime decided that they were going to get together and ban the use of car bombs, right? We know that car bombs is a classic tactic that's used to get rid of the opposition. And at some point in the U.S., the 5 families got together and said, listen, this car bomb thing's got to go, right? Because the idea is that now you're putting the civilians in danger, right? And this is something that Michael Francesi would talk about. He's like, listen, everybody thinks that we're out there gunning people and gunning people down like the Wild Wild West. We did our best to keep it within ourselves, right? Like if we were doing it, and then we only did it when we had to. So it wasn't like we were going out, oh, I think I'll kill 8 people today, right? Like this is not a movie. This is not John Wick, right? I love John Wick, right? But that's not real life, right? He said the real life is you go and you have rules. Somebody breaks the rules, then they get permission to go and take somebody out, right? And it's done very planful and very that's why usually they use friends, right? They have a best friend lured, right? So that person gets the guard down, and then your best friend, right? The one thing about the life is that your best friend walks you into a room and poof, then you're gone, right? And it's your best friend that does it. We learned that with Donnie Brasco because that's actually true. They're not going to sit there and send somebody, right? Unless they have to, they'll send somebody from out of town, right? Like that old thing, like we're going to go and we're going to call somebody else from. That happens, right? And that happens too. But usually in that life, they will go and they're like, hey, that guy, you grew up with him, so you're the best person to go take him out. And you got to follow orders, right? Or else you go, right? So it's one of those things. I'm like, you can't say no. I mean, you can say no, but then you're going, right? So again, that's why that life is so intriguing. Not because I love that idea and that kind of those rules, but just the fact that there are rules, and ultimately, if you don't play by the rules, well, you pay the ultimate consequence. Anyway, I'll stop there. But you can already see here in locations, Godfather 2 went New York, Sicily, Tahoe, right? So in Las Vegas and the Dominican Republic, right? So those scenes in Havana, Cuba, they were really shot in the Dominican Republic. I thought that was actually a really good decision, right? I don't know if that was even possible in the 70s, right? The early 70s, 1974, to go to Cuba and shoot on location. I don't know if that would be a wise idea. So they went and they used the next best thing, right? If they didn't have DR, then maybe they could have done it in Puerto Rico. But they shot it in the Dominican Republic, and I thought it looked really right. It's the Caribbean, right? You know what I mean? Like it had that look. And the legacy established in the myth, and then part 2 deepened and deconstructed it. So let me just keep going here. And I'm sorry about this, but I just sometimes it's kind of like a gunfight. Sometimes like the idea of a gunfight, how to be quick, how to slow things down when you're in a hurry. I think that might have been Wild Bill Hickok that said that the number one rule of a gunfight is how to slow things down when you're in a hurry. That's pretty beautiful, to be honest. You know what I mean? Ian, you can let me know if that's actually accurate. Somebody said that, and I think it was Wild Bill Hickok, but that could be wrong. Some gunslinger said that, or maybe it was a movie gunslinger. It just sounds like something maybe Gene Hackman would say, right? In one of his classic westerns, Little Bill or something. Anyway, okay. Symbolism across generations, right? The power, right? The theme of power. In The Godfather 1, it's rooted in family and respect. In The Godfather Part 2, it's rooted in fear and control, right? So that goes to show you the idea of when Vito was running the show, it was about family and respect, right? When Michael ran the show, it was about fear and control, right? So he's his father's son, and he learned a lot from his dad. He just had a very different leadership style, right? Fear and control. And it's not just a fear, right? Again, Michael did a lot of things that he did out of fear, right? A fear of not acting, right? Vito never, right? His dad did things, and you never really thought of him as a fearful person. That's what I thought was really great about The Godfather 2, is that you're seeing the two characters, right, and being played about, right? You got Michael, who's in control in the 50s, and then you got his dad, who's ascending, and then ultimately getting into control in the early 1900s. And Vito was very much like, he was never really scared, right? It was like, you know, to the degree that you somebody that can't be scared, right? But Vito was more fearless, and he was very trusting, right? He trusted a lot. Michael was very untrustworthy, right? Like, meaning that he was more suspicious of everybody around him, because again, Michael happened to experience a lot more betrayal, I think, than Vito, or maybe he didn't experience the same betrayal. He just learned, you know, the betrayal that Michael experienced hit him a lot deeper. So Michael responded the way Michael responded. You know, he's like, okay, I'm gonna take care of this. You know, Vito is very different, very similar, but also very different. The color palettes, right? The color palettes in The Godfather 1 are very warm browns. They're olives, they're tans. In The Godfather 2, you hear these cold grays, the blacks, the blues, right? Does that sound familiar? The grays, the blacks, and the blues? They're the staunch colors, right? They're the conservative colors, because Michael Corleone's trying to be corporate, right? He promised Kay, his wife, in The Godfather, right? And remember, in the original Godfather, that the Corleone family was going to go legitimate, right? So it makes sense that Michael was going to try to dress like a businessman, right? You see him dealing with the senator in Las Vegas early in part 2, and that's no accident. Ian says, Quentin Tarantino made so many great movies. I love Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Django Unchained, Kill Bill, From Dusk Till Dawn, and many more. Yeah, I agree, 110%. Quentin Tarantino, I believe he's no longer, I think Quentin Tarantino has already made his last movie. I think he's retired, but his catalog is impeccable. And again, the reason why Quentin Tarantino is so revered and respected is that, well, you know, let me see if I can maximize this. I probably should have done this to begin with, but I didn't. Sorry, guys. But yeah, Quentin Tarantino, man, that's I'll probably go and do some Quentin Tarantino. I'm a big fan as well, Ian. So yeah, I will try to do that as well. He's just way too good not to like include here on any kind of right. And obviously, King of New York is not a Quentin Tarantino movie, but it's one of his favorite movies. Right? We will cover King of New York here. Not because it's like a quintessential hat movie. It's just a good movie, you know? So thank you, Ian. I agree. Oh, sorry. That wasn't Ian. Sorry, that was Jody. Sorry. Sorry, Jody. I thought that was Ian for a second. I misread. That was Jody mentioning about Quentin Tarantino. Agreed. Jody adds, of course, all the Godfather movies. Yeah. And yeah, sorry, Jody. My bad. Sorry, I had a senior moment there. And then also, sorry, Ian. But yeah, the mood, right? The mood between the movies, right? Oh, wait a minute. I mentioned, I forgot, like, I skipped some parts, right? So you can see where I'm at right here. I should probably have more coffee. Formality. Jody, thank you for being you. You have a lot of grace. And thanks for extending me grace. So... Formality, right? The formality of The Godfather 1, classic Italian-American elegance, right? The tonality or the formality of Godfather Part 2, corporate American rigidity. Isn't that beautiful, right? Like that juxtaposition to like, you got the same folks. Like, oh no, we already did that. We're going to do this because this is how Michael is going to approach it. That was Vito. This is Michael's story, but also we're going to tell Vito's story too, right? So again, they went and said, oh, now we got a budget? Okay, we got a budget now. We're going to essentially make 2 movies in one. And that's what they did. They pulled it off brilliantly, you know? So, okay, hats as a symbol, right? In Godfather 1, legacy and continuity. In Godfather 2, isolation and surveillance. You can see here the paranoia, right? The idea is that we have like elegance and continuity, right? Legacy, right? Like The Godfather 1 is a story of succession planning, right? Godfather 2 is a story of like maintenance, right? And vigilance, right? Like we're at number 1, right? That they touched on that in a way in Godfather 1, but part 2 is like Michael's like, okay, I'm gonna take this all over, right? I gotta go and I gotta dominate, right? None of this what do you call it, pussyfooting, right? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna be the John D. Rockefeller of this thing, right? I'm gonna go and do it. I'm gonna be the Rockefeller of the mob world, of the organized crime world. Then I'm gonna actually be I'm gonna go ahead of Rockefeller in his business world. That's the idea, right? Because that's what his dad wanted for him. You know what I mean? His dad wanted him to be a senator, like a great man, a legitimate man. So he's like trying to fulfill his dad's destiny, but only as Michael knows how to do it, right? Michael is a very cold, calculating guy, right? And he doesn't know how to do it any other way than this. It's kind of like, don't trust anybody, right? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, right? That's a beautiful line that he quoted in part 2, where he's talking to Frank Pantangeli, because Pantangeli is living in his dad's old house, and he's there in his study. He's like, oh, I learned a lot of great lessons in this room. You know, I also learned one of the great lessons my dad taught me was keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Man, what a beautifully delivered by Pacino. Anyway, mood, right? Very romantic tradition, right? Like the idea of celebrating the Italian culture, right? When that Italian wedding, right? No Sicilian could refuse a request on the day of his daughter's wedding, right? That's Godfather 1. Right, but Godfather 2 was like this chilling modernism, right? It's really like if you watch the movie Gotti, right? Not the one that John Travolta made. That's an abomination, more or less. I watched it, but it doesn't hold to candle to the HBO Gotti, right? If you don't trust me, you can watch Michael Francesi talk about it, right? He actually talked about it with Armand Assante, who played Gotti. So shout out to Armand Assante, shout out to Michael Francesi. But it's kind of like that term that Armand Assante used when he played Gotti. He said, time to go back to some real in-your-face Cosa Nostra, right? Right, that idea of like that true gangsterism, right? It's like, all right, my dad was very elegant. I'm not about that. I'm gonna cut to the chase, right? It's black and white. Michael is very black and white. Like there's no gray. You're either with me or you're against me. And again, that he really divided the people around him, because they're like, dude, like, can I be gray? No, there's no gray. Like if you're gray, you're dead to me. That's Michael, right? Like with Kay's like, oh, you did this, you're dead to me, right? And be careful, because if I can kill, right? That's the message, right? When Michael ended up calling for the killing of Fredo, right? He did so without even speaking. That he's like asserted his power in that very powerful scene, right? And they used it, right? Russell Buffalino, Joe Pesci's character in The Irishman, did the very same thing, and I thought that was a really nice nod to The Godfather, particularly The Godfather Part II, when he would just give Robert De Niro's character a look, and then right then and there, Frank Sheeran, who was played by De Niro, already knew that he had to go and commit, go take somebody out, right? That's how Crazy Joe Gallo. Again, I know a lot of that wasn't true, right? Michael Francesi said there was a lot of inaccuracies. A lot of people have said that doesn't matter to me, though, right? For me, it's not about the accuracy; it's about the drama. So for me, Joe Pesci, when he gave the look to Frank Sheeran in The Irishman. And we'll cover The Irishman as well. I thought it was a very worthy movie, especially for something that came out in 2019. If you haven't watched The Irishman, I recommend it. Yeah, the idea of Russell Buffalino giving a look to one of his right-hand man, right? It was just beautifully done, really beautifully done. And it was a nod, I think. Again, I don't know if this was something that has existed in cinema for ages. I'm talking about The Godfather 2 as if they invented it. But who knows? Maybe somebody else who knows more about filmography says, well, that's not original at all. You know what I mean? Like they'll do this. Hey, look, actually, actually, it's like, I don't pretend to know everything. I'm just telling you what I think. I'm an expert in my own opinion. And for me, that was a nod to Godfather 2. And it doesn't matter what the actual truth is, right? Like, if Joe Pesci could go and talk about that, and shout out to Joe Pesci, man. He came out of retirement to The Irishman. I would love to meet Joe Pesci because, well, I mean, I have a connection to Joe Pesci. So, you know, it's one of those things where I'm like, I gotta meet that man one day. I hope I get to. So, you know, also Frankie Valli, you know, Joe Pesci and Frankie Valli, only because now, you know, Frank Vincent is no longer with us. I would have loved to have met him as well, but I don't have that chance. But Frankie Valli and Joe Pesci, I gotta meet those two gentlemen. I'd like to meet Robert De Niro one day, but I don't have as much of a connection to Robert De Niro, right? For me, there's a family connection to Frankie Valli and Joe Pesci, but you know, I'll save that for another day. I don't really want to go into that. But anyway, yeah, what was I going? Chilling moderns. Okay, so we'll go into this. This is the last Chat GPT slide. The Godfather, the original Godfather, used hats to represent family, tradition, and respect. Love that. Completely agree. Godfather Part II transformed hats into symbols of power, isolation, and control. There goes that control thing. Isolation, control, and power. What a great, right? Everybody's like, describe Godfather in 3 words: family, tradition, and respect. Describe the Godfather Part II in 3 words: power, isolation, and control. Man, really great. Shout out to ChatGPT. But anyway, the last bullet here, the evolution from felt to form, from warmth to chill, mirrors the Corleone's tragic journey from unity to corruption, right? Isn't that amazing, right? It's like, I intended to go legitimate, right? My intention, right? This is the beauty of everything about The Godfather. The whole intention was, the Corleone family is gonna go from being organized crime, right, like a criminal organization, right, to becoming a corporate entity, right? We're gonna go corporate, but in that transition, we're gonna lose it all. Meaning, we're gonna go away from family. We're gonna go from being united to something that's actually corrupt. Isn't that like, there's a message here, right? It's kind of like, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Like and also the power of leadership, right? I mean, we talk about organizational cultures and how like it's important who's running an organization, right? Everybody that sees like changes in who's running the show, right? Like Amazon is probably not the same company it was when Jeff Bezos left. Microsoft is not the same company it was when Bill Gates left. Apple is not the same company it was when Steve Jobs passed away, right? And relinquished control, right? Just like, you know, Tesla and SpaceX might not be the same company if Elon Musk were to leave it. Meta might not be the same company if Mark Zuckerberg leaves it, and yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so I just get in my brain. So anyway, I just saw some, you know how I'll do. I'll get into photos now, and just some interesting photos, especially when like these are like posters, either they are made by fans or they are posters that were released in other countries. One thing I noticed about like a lot of the posters is the hats were all in them, right? And here's one thing I wanted to mention here, because I don't know if I have a photo of it. If you notice on the very right hand here, it's Fredo, right? It's Fredo Corleone, and he's kind of got a scared look on him. But what he's also has is a hat on. Fredo was somebody that was hanging out in warmer climates, right? So he was sent to go to Nevada, right? In Godfather 1, right? Everybody knows about Mo Green. Then ultimately, he was sent to Cuba, even though it was Dominican Republic, really. But he went to Cuba, and he was there to be next to Michael, right? Michael had him close, right? Because I mean, Michael was like, something's amiss here. Let me go and take my brother Fredo and put him into this environment. And Fredo's wearing a Panama hat, you know, and it's really good looking one. You look good, like John Cazale, who's a great actor, right? Dog Day Afternoon, I believe, is the other movie he did with Pacino. Great actor, very tragic like actor, right? Like a lot of actors, you know, with problems. John Cazale, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correct. He also had his hair shed. I think he died very young. But great actor, right? He did, like, who could do that Fredo, that scared Fredo look like he does, you know? And just really good character, you know. But look at this, you know, the great Lee Strasberg. And if you don't know too much about Lee Strasberg, look him up. The guy was a guy that taught, right? I believe he was the gentleman that taught Al Pacino about acting, right? So they went and they got Lee Strasberg, right? They were like, okay, we could get Lee Strasberg here as a coach, right? Because he is a teacher of acting. Or we could just get Lee Strasberg to do it himself, right? And this, like, it has parallels to something that I saw with the movie Full Metal Jacket, right? If you watch the movie Full Metal Jacket, it's a really classic war movie, right? It's not, I don't know if it's a hat movie. I don't think I would call it a hat movie. I call it a war movie. And if you guys see it, you know probably who I'm talking about. But there's a lot of characters in there. But I'm talking about the drill sergeant, right? Lee Ermey, who I believe has passed away now. But Lee Ermey, right? The Gunny, right? Everybody knows him as the Gunny, right? If you're a former Marine or a current Marine, you know about the Gunny, right? He is a guy that he was a consultant on Full Metal Jacket. And they were like, he was doing, like, you know, that if you guys have ever worked with Marines, you guys know, like, the drill sergeant, the Marine drill sergeant, they do this. You know, I've had a Marine show me, it's like, oh yeah, everybody knows if the Gunny goes and does this, you got trouble on your hands. So Lee Ermey was somebody that was brought onto the set of Full Metal Jacket, and he was there to coach the guy that was going to play the character about how to actually look like a legitimate Marine. And they're watching Lee Ermey, and they're like, why are we sitting here getting the guy to coach him? Let's just get the Gunny himself to do the character. And that's what they did. And he stole the show, right? So, like, the Gunny himself became famous in Full Metal Jacket because he was there. He was basically like Lee Strasberg. They were like, well, why bring him on to coach, right? Like, why go and deal with the milk when we got the cow right here, right? We're over here fussing with milk bottles. We got the cow right here. Hey, great anecdote. Josh says, I met Gunny at basic training and saw him do it on my drill sergeants. It was epic. Yeah. Josh knows where I'm saying. That's why I always say this because, again, I've never been in the military. I just worked with a lot of military folks. So I have an idea, right? So I actually worked on site with folks that from the Marine Corps, from the Army, from the Coast Guard, from the Navy, from the Air Force. Not the Space Force. That's kind of like after my time. But, you know, the Marines are the Marines, right? Everybody kind of knows, even if that's not your service, you know, right? The few, the proud, right? The Marines, they're like, you know, I have a great Marine Corps story, man. I have such a great Marine Corps story. It's not even funny. I won't go into it because it's like I'm going to get like back sidetracked. But that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Josh. Yeah, the Gunny is somebody that I can imagine the Gunny was the Gunny, right? Like on set, and he's magnetic. This gentleman, right? If you don't know Lee Ermey, the Gunny, look him up, right? You've probably seen him somewhere, right? Because he became famous, like because he's a guy that you can take. He commands your attention, right? And the Gunny was probably the Gunny up until he passed away, because he just was magnetic. You were drawn to him like a moth, right? I love that kind of stuff, you know. Just the psychology of that, right? It's like, who's that dude that you can't, like, you know what I mean? Like, why can't I stop looking at this dude, right? Why can't I stop listening to this guy? And there's no wonder that he's like up there as the drill sergeant, because like, if anybody's gonna listen, right? If anybody's gonna get the most out of a platoon, like a crew, is gonna be that guy. So when they saw the Gunny in action doing the coaching, they were like, hey, forget about this. Hey, you no longer have a job. I don't know who it was that he replaced. Hopefully I'm not being rude to that person if they're still alive. But somebody lost their job because the Gunny outshunned them, right? Because he was the teacher. So they just went and put the teacher up there. They did the same thing here with Lee Strasberg, except I don't know if they ever intended to get somebody other than Lee Strasberg to play Hyman Roth. But he did a masterful job, right? It's like very few people could have pulled off Hyman Roth. And then you had Dominic Chianese, I believe, right? a young Dominic Chianese, I believe that's how I'm pronouncing his name. I believe that's correct, but I could be wrong. You might know him as Junior Soprano, right? Corrado Soprano from The Sopranos. He's in The Godfather 2. He plays the right-hand man for Hyman Roth, Lee Strasberg, and he does another great job, right? That guy, he was also in Gotti. Dominic Chianese, I don't know if he's still alive. I hope he's alive. He's a brilliant, brilliant actor, just very magnetic, right? Everybody knows about Junior, right? A lot of people tell me, it's like when they'll see me in this outfit, they're like, you know who you look like? I was like, who? I was like, you look like Corrado or Uncle Junior. They'll say, if they don't know Corrado, they'll say Uncle Junior. You look like that guy in The Sopranos. And I know who they're talking about. They're talking about Junior. And I'm like, I can't be mad at that. You know what I mean? I'm like, if anybody I'd like to look like, it'd be Junior, right? Like that. What an intriguing character, Junior Soprano, right? Corrado, the guy that's second in line, right? He's the heir apparent in his mind, but his nephew takes over, right? Like that's another one of those layers of The Sopranos that made The Sopranos great. That's like, it's just one of the many layers in that show. Right? Again, it makes for good art, good theater, and just good, interesting watching, right? To see family dynamics played out on the screen. But yeah, anyway, shout out to Josh for sharing that. That's really cool story. And I'm sure you're probably full of like really cool stories like that. Military folks, just again, the nice thing about the military, like for those folks that, I know there's a lot of opinions about the military, but in general, I believe that people support our troops, right? There's the norm of patriotism. Right? So regardless of how we feel about politics, almost everybody I come across really supports the troops, right? Very few people that don't support the troops, right? So shout out to the troops out there, to all the services. Yeah, it's one of those things where when I was working with military folks, is just the benefits that you have at a young age, right? I had the benefit of seeing a gentleman retire at the age of 37 and a half. He was 37 and a half because he enlisted at 17 and a half, which is, I think, the earliest you can enlist, unless they changed that rule since back in the day. But this gentleman enlisted at 17 and a half, and then at 37 and a half, he retired, not because he was going to stop working. He was just like, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to collect my paycheck, right? My check. And then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I was like, wow, isn't that amazing? Right? It's like, they don't talk about that when they're like, at least enough people don't talk about that, about what the benefit is when you are thinking of signing up for the military, or you have a child that wants to sign up for the military. Everybody's just thinking, which is the obvious. Oh, I don't know if I want my child in the military because I'm scared. They're too tender. They're too this. I don't know, man. I don't, to each their own. But I do know that there's incredible benefits from being, from joining an organization like the military. And again, it's like any organization. There's good stuff, there's bad stuff, and a whole bunch of stuff in between. It's probably not for everybody, but I met so many folks in the DC area. We got so many military folks, military and former military folks, right? Because the DC area just has that. There's very transient, and the military is a big part of that. And I met so many great folks, And again, there's bad folks, Well, sorry, not bad. Sorry, OTG, other than good, right? There's really great good folks, and OTG, other than good. Again, don't matter, right? Don't matter to me. You're either good or not, or OTG. Regardless of what you feel about, most things. Anyway, I'll leave that at that. But yeah, let's see some photos here. This is oh my gosh, this is obviously a behind the scenes. They got Francis Ford Coppola. Sorry, I don't even know if that's Coppola. That might actually be Mario Puzo. I think this is Puzo here. Puzo was a little bit bigger guy than Coppola. So yeah, this is Puzo here. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. And you got De Niro. Look at this like scene here. Look at the flat cap action here. Wow, just really good stuff. Let me see if I focus in. Hopefully you guys can see this. But yeah, you got obviously De Niro's character wearing a flat cap here. Very iconic look here in Vito's story. This is when he's already in New York, already kind of getting his bearings in New York and New York City life. And then I don't know this gentleman here on the left. I'm assuming that he's also either stand-in or an actor, but I don't remember him from the movie, so I couldn't tell you. But just I do love these shots. So again, I won't belabor this too much. The movie speaks for itself, right? I've already, I think, said a lot of what I need. Right? I already talked my talk. You know, I spoke my speech, did my thing. You know, the whole thing and nothing but the thing. So all I'm just going to show you is like these shots, and then speak if I have something to say about it. This is another kind of like movie poster. This is an interesting shot right here. Like I said, it's Michael, right? It says here, El Padrino, parte dos, right? So Il Padrino, right? So this is an Italian looking poster, right? So it's written in Italian. It has Francis Ford Coppola in there. It has obviously the puppeteer, the puppet master, right? Like you guys know that from The Good Luke's, but it's the Godfather, right? This is the inspiration of The Good Luke's logo, the current logo. But you can see, right? Like I don't even know if I remember this shot in the movie, because I don't think I remember a scene in Godfather Part II where Michael's wearing a hat. But this could have been something that got cut from Part 2. But it goes to show you, right, when they're looking at a poster and this is about Michael, they're still putting him in a hat, and it's got a hat tilt, and it looks like he's got a cigar in his hand, or something, like smoking something. He definitely smokes in the movie. I don't know, this one, it could be a cigarette because I can't really tell. In the movie, he's smoking because, you know, Al Pacino smokes. So I'm sure they kind of wrote that in, you know, but also the character, Michael's character would be a smoker, right? Because he's paranoid, right? He probably needs to smoke in order to kind of calm his nerves and like his fear, his paranoia, right? He needs all the vices because, well, he can't trust anybody around him, right? He's been betrayed too much. Now he's dealing with all this other betrayal, even within his family. So this is a guy with a lot on his mind. He's trying to get to a certain spot. He's got problems with his wife. He's a control freak, right? Michael is a control freak. And right, it's somebody like that has to have something to calm him down. So nicotine, booze, you know, to the degree that it won't like dull his senses, right? Like we don't see Michael Corleone drunk in any of this movie, right? I don't think in Part 1 either, right? He's not somebody that does that because it's too risky, right? Like even his dad, even Marlon Brando in Part 1 said, you know, men cannot afford to be risky, I believe. I don't know. I butchered that. I mentioned it in the first one. He's like, that's something only women and children could afford, right? But not men. I butchered that, but you guys get what I'm trying to say here. Anyway, I'll just keep going here. But I just thought the posters, especially the international posters that you might see of the Godfather movies, look very different because they focus on the hat, right? Like that's the thing. Is like the American posters, they're like, okay, we might have a hat in there, but right? Because again, people have in their mind, especially internationally, if it's a gangster movie, the guy that's there, the protagonist, you know, the focal point, they should be wearing a hat, right? Because that fits the image. Even though in the movie, like I said, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. In Part 2, I don't even remember, right? I'm looking at all the photos that I posted, that I'm going to post here, that I gathered. I don't think one of them has Michael Corleone in a hat. In Part 1, he wears a hat. In Part 2, he does not. Now, there's a very good reason for that. Remember, we talked about this when I went in the original Godfather. Hats are something that Michael used to establish legitimacy when he was on the come up, right? So Michael Corleone in Godfather Part 2, he's already running the family. He's already the Don, right? He doesn't need a hat. Just like his dad, Vito, didn't wear too many hats, right? I think it might have been the only cut scene, right? It was a scene that they shot when they were going to visit Jenko in the hospital. Jenko Abandando, who's actually talked about and mentioned and shown in Godfather 2, right? Because he becomes Vito's consigliere. In Part 1, he dies, and that's when Tom Hagen takes over the family. But there's a scene where he's dying that they ended up cutting. I don't know. They probably had their reasons. Maybe they thought the movie was too long. Maybe the studio forced them. But it was a very beautiful scene And before they got to that scene, there was a very beautiful exchange between Marlon Brando's Vito with Al Pacino's Michael, where they talked about like, hey, I never wanted any of this for you. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want you to do that. Like, and I think there was the exact conversation when they get to the hospital. It was along the lines of, you never come to me like a son should, right? So he's kind of in a way scolding Michael for being like a rebel, right? It's like, hey, I wouldn't have approved of you going to war, right? Like you did that without my blessing. Like I don't approve of that. I love you, right? Nothing's gonna happen about it, right? Like you could see, right? You could see already how Vito handles betrayal, right? To the way Michael handles betrayal later on, right? Right. So his dad showed him, right? His dad didn't be like, you're dead to me, son, right? You're done. You're out of the family. No, he's like, all he did was very soft spoken. He said, Michael, you didn't come to me like a father should, like I'm that makes me feel a certain way, but we'll talk about that later. Just really cool. It really tells you a lot about Vito, but it also contrasts and tells you a lot about Michael. He was raised by his father, but the way Michael chose to become a leader is somebody that, oh, you don't do what I say, right, Connie? You don't do what I say, I'm going to make problems. Fredo, you don't do what I say, I'm going to make problems. Kay, my wife, you don't do what I say, you're done. Like, you're not even technically my family. I just married you, right? Like I had a wife before I even met you. And then she got killed, right? Like I chose you. And now you do what you did to me, right? So he was betrayed by Kay as well, right? With the abortion, right? And so this is a man that's like, all he sees is betrayal around him. So it makes him very suspicious of everybody, right? He can't trust anybody, and that's the way he chooses. Like Vito, he's very different than his dad. Very successful, his own right. Very, very, very methodical and but not trustworthy. He is really different from his dad. I think that's a very beautiful thing, right? It's like he's his dad's son, but at the same time, he's a different man than his dad. So I don't know. That's all I'll say about that. But just some beautiful. Look at this. The way they shot the scenes, right, for the 1900s, it really brings you back. And there's like this photo is a little weird because it has like a little inlet here, right? But I'm not looking at that. That's like I believe. From, well, obviously you see Sonny. So this is either from part 1 or in the movie in part 2 where they go and they do flashback, right? So that's probably that scene. But I'm not looking at that. What I'm looking at is this, first of all, this gentleman selling oranges, right? And he's handing Vito an orange, right? Like a bag of oranges, right? Because at this point, Vito's already like, right? Do you see Vito wearing a hat? No. What does Vito do? What is Vito wearing? He's wearing headwear. Right? We talked about this before. Vito's wearing headwear now, except that it's his hair, right? The way Vito styles his hair is now his hat because he doesn't need a hat. Vito's already, right? This man is handing over a bag of oranges for free because he knows Vito's reputation. So he's like, out of respect and maybe out of fear, right? Regardless of how you think, probably more out of respect. He's handing over this bag of oranges to Vito. He's like, hey, because Vito has already established that he knows how to return a favor, right? So why wouldn't I give to this man who has so much power? Why wouldn't I give him a bag of a few oranges? It might cost me, who knows, right? I got a lot of oranges here. It might cost me very little, but the gesture, right? Vito's like looking at him already like, wow, just the gesture. I know that this means nothing, but to me, I'm going to treat it as if you gave me something really great here, right? Like, I mean, I'm reading into this, but you guys know what that this is purposeful. This is not an accident. Like Vito's already established himself, and he even says later on, I know how to return a favor. I'll get to that in a second. But I think it's very beautiful, man. This movie is just beautiful. There's another great hat like shot, right? Obviously, we had Chi-Chi here. We got Frank Pentangeli, right? And remember, Frank Pentangeli was one of those characters that was like a last-minute character, right? What happened was the intention behind Frank Pentangeli was, well, that was supposed to be Clemenza's story, right? But the actor, I forgot his name, the actor that played Clemenza in Godfather 1, he started making demands. Hopefully I didn't butcher this. You guys can correct me if you're wrong, if you know this. But I believe there was some sort of, he was kind of expecting a lot more of Puzo and Coppola, either in money-wise or in lines, right? And right? He was kind of like, people love me. Like, you can't do Godfather 2 without me. And sure enough, they did, right? Clemenza is in Godfather Part 2, but it's in the Vito story. And it's not the gentleman that played Clemenza in Part 1. That was something where now Frank Pentangeli is a character, right? Frankie Five Angels, right? That's what Pentangeli means. Pent is 5, Angeli is angel, right? So Frankie Five Angels is just a play on his name, which is something very like Italian, I think, right? It's like Moltisanti, right, from The Sopranos, right? That means many saints, right? And that's why you said the many saints of Newark. Anyway, you probably knew that, but I just want to mention it because, well, it's top of mind. But just really great hats in this scene right here. Again, Pentangeli's character is somebody that he took over for Clemenza, and they address it, right? They had to write it into the script because, well, otherwise they would have this hole in the story because, well, the guy that played Clemenza didn't want to, like, he didn't play ball, right? And that's what happened. So anyway, just a great shot here. You guys, again, I won't spend too much time, but I just want to kind of just any kind of scenes that have a hat in it, I want to call it out. If I know the scene, I will talk about it. But I don't want to spend too much on this one. But really great hats in here. And again, remember, this is the 1900s, so you're going to see a lot more of the high crown here, right? You got Chichi here. I believe that's his name, Chichi. He's over here. He's got a very decent, like, he's got the black hats, right? This gentleman right here has a very light colored felt, but and as well as this gentleman here in the background. But in general, you got darker, right? Darker suits, kind of to see to like the sinisterness of this group here. So I'll go on. Okay, this is like, wow, look at this. Look at the wardrobe, man. Everybody knows this scene, right? I mean, I hope you do. This is like one of those like iconic, right? When already Vito's character is getting known in the neighborhood, right? He's already taken out Don Fanucci, right? That's how he kind of establishes his rep as somebody that you don't want to mess with, right? Because Fanucci was a gentleman. I don't know why I didn't find a photo of Fanucci. I fully expected that, and I just didn't like spend enough time to get it. But you guys know Don Fanucci was a character that, you know, he ultimately was taken out by Vito. And he wore a very sharp outfit, right? He was kind of like, he represented the black hand, but to Vito, right, he represented weakness, right? It's like, why are you guys scared of this guy, right? Why are you scared of this Fanucci guy? He's soft, right? Very much like Scarface's character in Pacino's character in Scarface when he saw Frank Lopez. He's like, that guy's soft. Like, he's fake. He's a fugazi, right? In Donnie Brasco terms. And only Vito sees it, right? Clemenza and Tessio don't see it. They're scared of Fanucci. So Vito was like, I'll take care of it. You know, he's like, he wants all this money? You listen, you give me $50 or whatever it was, right? Or maybe it was, I forget the amount. You guys each give me $50. I'll go and I'll get Fanucci to accept it. And it's very beautiful, very methodical, and like it tells you, right? Like everything you need to know about Vito and the mastermind that he is. And Vito's looking around him, kind of like he has that moment, right? Like, you guys all see me post on Facebook when Neo figured out he was the one, right? Right, and Bruce Leroy, right, and The Last Dragon figures out that he's the master, right? In Part 1, Godfather Part 1, when Michael is lighting that cigarette for Enzo the baker, right, and he realizes that he's not nervous, right? It's that moment where Vito realizes, oh man, I'm built a little different, right? If you want to, like, Sammy the Bull Gravano, he has a YouTube channel as well. Shout out to Sammy the Bull. Sammy Bull Gravano talks about like his first hit, and he mentions, I fully expected when I did my first hit to go and like be very nervous, right? I expected to like have like to be like really like cloudy. And then Sammy mentions, he's like, I felt nothing. I literally felt nothing. And I'm like, I expected it because I saw all the movies of like somebody killing somebody and like getting really nervous and really like out of sorts. Sammy was like, I felt nothing. And then I was like, all right, well, I guess I don't feel that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? There you go. There's that moment of realization. So the nice thing that I mentioned about this, and again, it's not because I celebrate gangsterism. That's not the point here. What I'm saying is that everybody has their moment, right? And because it's celebrated in cinema, we already heard Sammy talk about it in real life. Everybody has that moment where they realize, hey, I'm all right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna be okay, right? And I'm gonna now that I know that I'm okay, I'm gonna go to the next step, the next level, right? Right? And maybe you don't feel like you're the master, but you have some sort of degree of mastery, right? What is it? I think it's Epictetus, the famous philosopher that said, you know, oh man, I'm gonna butcher this. I probably won't. You know, about being a master of oneself, right? Yeah, I posted it on Facebook before, you know, but I won't mention it because I won't give you the quote because I'll butcher it way too much. It's too much of a powerful quote for me to butcher it. Ian, maybe you can look it up about being a master of oneself. That way you guys can benefit from the quote and I won't have to butcher it. But Epictetus, you know, I'm a big fan of like Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism, and Epictetus is one of those others. There's others, including modern day ones. You know, and again, I'm not very well read, but you know, I think my ADHD is part of that. But I am a big fan of philosophy, and especially Stoicism, right? Like if you like Star Trek, right? The Vulcans are like the Star Trek equivalent of the Stoics, right? They are people that they try not to get emotional and they try to use logic. Right. So shout out to the Vulcans in Star Trek. You know, there's a lot of, you know, very, very big analogies in Star Trek to like actual peoples and actual events, especially historical ones. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But this is a very, very well-known scene. Obviously, this Vito's no longer wearing a hat, right? Because he's kind of like beyond it here. But he's talking to this gentleman who's a landlord, and the gentleman has no idea who he's talking to. And he's very, very curt and very like, and Vito is really calm, cool, and collected, right? He's like trying to give him a chance. He's like, listen, you don't know who you're talking to, but he's telling him like, why don't you ask around about me? And you know, and then he gives him like the foreshadowing. He says, trust me, when I tell you, I know how to return a favor. Just ask around. You know, I think it's really cool. Like De Niro killed it. And then that the hand motions, right? Like he's pointing to his own head, right? But he's telling him, hey, like to me, he's signaling to this landlord that doesn't know who he is. Use your head here, right? Think about it, right? Before you say anything stupid, think about what I'm telling you, right? And I'm gonna just leave here. Right? I'm gonna leave this conversation before you say something stupid that you're gonna regret. You know, it's really cool. Honestly, it's really cool. Like the dynamic, right? And it's like, you know, it's like, hey, man, like, be easy. I'm just trying to make sure that I help somebody out that, you know, one of your tenants, because she came to me for help. And, you know, like you're not making a good accounting for yourself, right? Be respectful is what Vito's trying to say. And I think that's a good lesson, right? Like I said, you always want to be respectful out there, right? So you guys, you know, like Morgan is great about that. You guys are all great about that. You know, I love that about you guys because you guys are always very respectful. You know, we don't really have any trolls that come on here. My channel's probably too small to have any legitimate trolls. But you guys are really cool and I appreciate that. But yeah, even like I said, even our youngest, like Morgan, who's 19, is so respectful. Man, shout out to Morgan. Morgan, I hope you killed it on your exam. You know, I know you were I felt like you were a little worried about it, but I was trying to be encouraging. So hopefully you'll come back at some point and let us know how you did. Hopefully you killed it. So shout out to you, Morgan. Anyway, this is another scene, right? Right, like you can see, man, look at those eyes. Wow. This is obviously we don't need to go too much, but look at the eyes on Pacino, man. right? It's like, right? It's like that phrase, if looks could kill, right? Look at this man. he's walking into a court of law and like staring a hole to like Frank Pantangeli. Right? He's like, you see who's behind me? Like he's got his hands up, but he's not covering the face of the gentleman behind him, right? He's kind of like, I'm talking to you, bro. And he's got Frank Pantangeli's brother right behind him, right? And his brother's like looking down, like, oh, what's going on? Like, that's kind of like, this guy knows how to send a message. You know what I mean? This is right? This is what these two have in common, right? This is Vito, the dad, sending a message to this gentleman, like, don't make me, right? It's like, don't make me do what I can do. You know what I mean? Like, just be reasonable, be easy. And this is Michael Corleone sending a message to Frank Pantangeli, right? It's like, make sure, right? But a lot less like, what do you call it? A lot less diplomatic, right? He's like, he's literally staring a hole right through Frank Pantangeli, saying, I got your brother right here, bro. Like, your brother's an innocent, but don't make me, right? And I'm not, like, you know what I mean? Like, Pacino killed it. And again, remember that Pacino is this is one of the beauties of Al Pacino, the actor. This is a very short guy, right? Like, Pacino, the man, is a very slight individual. You can see, look at the people around him. Everybody there, except for maybe the gentleman that's playing Frank Pantangeli's brother from Sicily, is shorter. I mean, it's taller than Pacino, right? That's not his game. His game is not like, I'm gonna like physically murder you, right? Like, I'm not gonna do it with my own hands. The thing is I have the power to touch anybody. Like, you can't, like, there's no planet on this earth that you can't, like, right? Sorry, there's no country on this earth that I can't reach, right? I'll go into Sicily itself and I'll pluck your family out and I'll bring them here and I will let you kill them, right? So essentially, like, I'm not killing them. It's you by going up there and testifying against me. So think about it, right? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just like this right here. This photo like says so much about like Michael and like his way versus this photo, right? This photo says a lot, right? I mean, very serious look on Vito here, right? But he's kind of like, hey, man, be smart, right? You use your brain. So I won't belabor that anymore. But this is young Vito, right? Looking at the Statue of Liberty. You can see the Statue of Liberty here, right? The eyes on the prize, right? So this is like, again, this is a kid that saw his mom and his parents murdered, right? Saw his brother, his older brother, murdered, like, right, by the same guy. What was it? Don Ciccio, I believe, in Sicily, that murdered, murdered Vito's dad, murdered his older brother, and then ultimately had his mom murdered when she went to go beg for Vito's life, right? That is shown in the beginning of this movie. But ultimately, he goes and he gets to America. He's wearing this cap. He's like very frail. He's sick, right? I believe he's got smallpox. He's got he's in the infirmary and he has to be quarantined. And that's where he gets his name, right? He's Vito Andolini. But when he gets to Ellis Island, he becomes Vito Corleone because he comes from Corleone. So it's beautiful. Like, and just look at the way it's shot. It's just gorgeous, right? And that's purposeful. Anyway, I won't belabor that. Again, this is not even from, this is a movie, a movie 10. I think it's called, from a Blu-ray series on the Godfather Part II, and it's just like a side profile of Vito, of young Vito, played by De Niro, wearing his getup with his flat cap. It looks like a newsboy here, and I'll show you that newsboy in a second. It's actually this one right here. I'll just jump that one for now. You can see here, right? The idea is this is Vito wearing a flat cap, right? This is very different from Jack Bondurant in Lawless, right? Where Jack Bondurant started off with a Hamburg and then moved on and got some money and got himself a flat cap, you know, to look a little bit more Chicago flashy. Vito in New York started off with, right, his flat caps, and then as he ascended, he went on to do the fedora when he went to Sicily, and then ultimately to no hat at all because he was already established, right? The hat is a storytelling tool, right? And then we'll get to that Sicily part here, right? So you can see here what a great, right? In Sicily, Vito is not known, right? They don't know him from Adam, right? Like he's from Sicily, but he escaped Sicily. A lot of people don't know him. Only the people that know that he wants to know him in Sicily, right? Because he escaped there when he was a young boy. When he goes there, he's gonna signal, "Hey, I'm a successful guy." That's what you got to know. I'm in the olive oil business. I'm a successful guy. Check out this hat. Probably nicer than your hat because I'm a take me serious. That's essentially what he's saying. He's using this hat to signal to the folks in Sicily that he's a serious guy. He's a guy you should pay attention to, right? Because they don't know him. They don't know that he killed Don Fanucci, right? Like his neighborhood knows, right? If this was in New York City, he wouldn't need this hat. But he's in Sicily now, in Corleone. And he's there on a mission. He's there to accomplish something. We all know what he's there to accomplish. So he's there, you know, he's got some good hats here. We got a flat cap, I believe, here, but I'm really loving the fedora, that gray, right? Like the classic gray fedora with the black band, right? And he's got a beautiful suit. Like the costuming here is just impeccable, you know? Like what can you say? It's, you know, the Godfather. It's $13 million and no small change in 1974. So, you know, this was a big budget production. And this is a beautiful shot. This one could be like, you know, this one could be like what you see in one of those photos that you get, right? When the picture frame, right? You could have easily seen that. I would love to buy a picture frame and have this photo in it. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't throw it away. So, you know, like you do with the photos of the person, right? That's in your photo frame before you put your photo in it. If I had this photo, I wouldn't throw it away. I just like, all right, I guess I better get a new frame because I'm keeping this photo. Look at it. Look at this. It's just beautiful. And again, everybody's got on a headwear here except for Vito. He does have headwear. He's got it looks like he's got his hair as his headwear here. Again, it's a family photo. You got you got young Michael here at the bottom, you know, our right, his left, and then in the middle here you got Fredo, then you got Sonny, and then you got, I believe this is Connie. Yeah. So anyway, and then obviously Mama Corleone. So yeah, beautiful photo. Again, I don't remember this from the movie. I don't even think it's in the movie, but yeah, just a great photo. I'll keep going. This is kind of when everybody knows the scene. This is when Vito has his newsboy hat on and he kills Don Fanucci, right? And he sees him and he just gets it done, right? This is his moment where he goes and he transforms himself into a killer, right? He does it to save his friends, right? He didn't kill Fanucci because Fanucci was scaring him. He killed Fanucci because he made his friends scared, right? Vito wasn't scared of Fanucci at all, right? He could care less. But once he saw that Fanucci was getting threatening his friends, that's when Vito, right? It's like a moral juxtaposition. Vito could care less, except that when you voted, right? Just the protector mode in Vito. He's like, now I got to get rid of this guy because now my friends are scared, you know? This is also a pretty, you know, interesting scene, right? This is Clemenza here on the right, you know, essentially about to like murder this cop if he decides that he's going to open this door, right? This is when Vito is getting his feet wet into like the criminal world, and Clemenza is the one that introduces him. You know, really cool. Again, they're robbing a house. It's not that I'm condoning robbing a house. It's not the point of this. But the point is that Clemenza's really sending a really big message to Vito about what needs to be done in this country to get ahead, right? And these are all messaging, right? Vito's taking in all these messages around him, right? He's a psychologist. Vito Corleone is very much a psychologist but the original psychologist, right? The human psychologist, the one that's like not with a degree, right? Not with a fancy degree. He's the kind that like, because my livelihood and my family depend on it, I have to know everything that's going on. I have to be the smartest man in the room, you know? So yeah, so this is a really great scene. And this is just a great hat Clemenza wears. Young Clemenza, the actor, wore a really great hat. He had just like, my favorite is the come on in, Vito, come on in. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just beautiful. Here's another shot, right? This is kind of like when they're, I believe they're looking at the newly opened Genco oil, right? They're right there admiring, and you got Clemenza there, like with his nice crown, right? Again, Vito's just got like my hair, right? I'm already the Don, right? I'm already established. I did the thing. I slayed the dragon, even though he really wasn't dragon. He was like a scaredy cat. But Clemenza's still wearing a hat because, well, now Clemenza works, right? They were best buddies, but because Vito showed that he had, you know, balls of steel, essentially Clemenza's like, okay, I work for you now, right? Because you obviously know what you're doing. Like if you were able to take Fanucci out, yeah, I'm with you, bro, right? But he wears a great hat, man. He just has one of those round faces, right? Like this actor could have easily played Al Capone and done a pretty good job, I thought, because he has that round face. He wears a great hat, you know. I don't remember his real name, the actor, but he did a great job. You know, it's just like Clemenza is one of those guys. It's like if you watch, like he's like everybody's uncle, right? You know, everybody knows about the uncle, right? Clemenza represents that. He's like, you know, he could be ruthless, but he'd rather just have a drink and you know and then womanize. You know, and he's like, as long as I got my food and my drink and my women, you know, I'm good. I don't need a whole lot. And that's how Clemenza was. It's too bad we didn't get to see him in Godfather Part II in the, you know, the what would have been potentially, you know, the role that was originally intended, because I would have liked to see that character and see what he was up to. I mean, I think that that gentleman played Clemenza really well, but at the same time, like, hey, you know, they couldn't. You know, the Coppola and Puzo had their hands tied on that. So, and I'm sure there might be a bigger story to that. But what else? This is another shot, right, of the very dismissive landlord, right, walking and doing a walk and talk, right? He doesn't even want to stop for Vito. He's like, you're wasting my time. And Vito's just doing this again. He's not doing this for himself. He's doing this for the lady that came to him for help. And again, he could care less, right? Like he's not there to kill people. He's there to help people, you know, and obviously he's going to help himself to whatever he needs to, but he literally not making a dime on this. If anything, he's losing money. Like he's willing to pay. He's like, listen, let this lady live there. I will pay you, right? And that's it. It's basically, that's all there is to it. I don't get anything from this. All I get is that I did somebody a favor. Maybe that lady will cook me something. I don't know what she'll do, but whatever she can do, whatever, even if she does nothing. I just want to do her a solid because, well, right? Vito says this early on. It's like when they talked about Fanucci, right? Him and Avenando talk. He's like, this guy's Italian. Why is he bothering other Italian people? Like, you know, and great question, right? It's like why are you doing that? You're using your power to oppress your fellow people instead of like helping them out, right? That just tells you a lot about Vito, the man, right? It's like, he's the man. Right? All right, so let's see here if there's anything else here. Oh yeah, this is obviously a very well-known scene, right? This is like this is Frank Pentageli, the attempted murder, right? This is at the behest of Hyman Roth with the Rosato brothers, right? In cahoots, it turns out. The one thing I want to point out here is, right, this is like that famous scene where he says Michael Corleone says hello, right? Where Tony Rosato does, Michael Corleone says hello. Well, that actor is Danny Aiello, right? The actor that's doing the choking here, that's choking Frank Pentageli character, that's Danny Aiello. And everybody knows Danny Aiello, right? He's no longer with us. I believe he's no longer with us. But he's a well-known actor, right? Everybody kind of knows Danny Aiello probably from Do the Right Thing, right? He played Sal, the pizza shop owner. And man, he you know, had a very small role here, but very memorable. Right? Everybody probably nobody remembers there was, well, very few people I remember, but A lot of people probably don't know that's Danny Aiello, but they do remember Michael Corleone says hello. You know, really, really, it's almost like leave the gun, take the cannoli. It's like the Godfather Part II's version of that. And I'm sure there are many other quotes, but that's one of those that stands out. So Danny Aiello happened to be the owner of like one of the classic lines, and who knows, that might have been his only line in the whole movie. I don't think I remember him ever having another line in that movie. He literally only said, "Michael Corleone says hello," and then starts choking Frank Pentangeli. It was just, again, just shows you what kind of movie we're dealing with. This is just one of those things. I don't even know if this was something I was prone to exclude. I'm like, oh yeah, Tom Hagen's here too. But you could tell, like, already Tom Hagen's such a different type of a feel in Godfather Part II. You know what I mean? He's just somebody like Michael Corleone is somebody that doesn't trust anybody. We already know that essentially in Part 1, he made Tom step aside as his consigliere because he wanted his dad to be his consigliere, right? So he's like, you're not a wartime consigliere, right? And if you know Michael Corleone, he's like, well, there's probably not going to be a time that I'm not in wartime, right? I'm so paranoid. I'm pretty much always in war. Like, I'm here to just like smash everybody. So Tom is still in the picture, but he's like almost like a background character, only because Michael is somebody that refuses to let people get too close, right? Like he already knows the right. He rather his enemies be close, right? Like he mentioned, his friends or so-called friends, he's got to keep them a little bit at bay, either for their protection, or because he doesn't trust them, or both. So I just wanted to point that out. Tom is kind of like, it's almost like, oh yeah, was Tom in this? Yeah, he wasn't in Part 3, right? He was, I think he passed away in when they did Part 3. His character did, but I think his kids were around. But anyway, I thought I'll talk about that. I think that was the last photo. Again, I didn't show that many photos of here. I just wanted to make sure that this, and then perfect. Okay, so that was all I had for the movie, man. I'm telling you, it was, again, we already talked about a lot of the reasons why I thought Part 2 was a superior movie, right? It was just a lot more cohesive, and I think the idea was, and maybe I mentioned this earlier, and I think I got this from ChatGPT, which was Godfather 1 was an accident, like it happened to be a masterpiece, right? It became a masterpiece, and that's it, right? Meaning it was let's just call it an accidental masterpiece, right? I don't think it was an accident per se, but it was an accident, right? It just came on the scene and became like this big thing, right? Despite all the problems. But Godfather Part 2 was very much an intentional masterpiece, right? And they're both beautiful in their own respects, right? The accidental masterpiece and the intentional masterpiece. But there's something about, right? I intended, right? When the idea behind, I intended to create a movie that was going to be like the bomb, right? It was going to be fire, like the kids would say. And they did it, right? It's one thing to, like, you know how many guys, right? That people don't intend to make movies these days that aren't hits, right? They're always doing that. But when they do it, right? It's like there's a great movie called Finding Forrester. I think I might have mentioned it on a previous stream. And Sean Connery plays Forrester. He's a writer that is a recluse, right? And I think I did mention this before. And his claim to fame was that he wrote one book, and it just happened to be the last great American, piece of fiction. It's just like, yeah, and then he was so like fed up with the system and like with the expectations that he never bothered to publish anything else, except for maybe a little article here and there, because it was just, he was done. Like, he was like, I did it in my first try. You know what I mean? Like, now it can only be downhill. There's too much expectations out there, and I just don't want to deal with that. And all he does is, like, he befriends this boy who also happens to write and is very different from him, but he's a boy in his neighborhood that he helps his journey, right? So his writing journey was more or less, he purposely cut it short. And then he finds like renewed energy in helping this child, right? This urban kid who wants to be a writer, and helping him further his writing, and not just his writing, but his life. And then in which case his life gets enriched, and the kid opens up doors for him. It's really a beautiful movie. I gotta tell you, Finding Forrester, you might have already seen it. It's not a unknown movie, but it's one of those movies that like, it really, I think, I don't know how well it did at the box office, but Sean Connery, what more can I say? You know what I mean? Sean Connery can almost do no wrong in my eyes. He just has one of those voices. He's James Bond, right? The original Bond. You don't get to play James Bond or be the original James Bond and not be a smooth, SOB. You know what I mean? Right? It's like we talked about the epitome of cool, right? James Bond is kind of the epitome of cool. Shout out to James Bond. Shout out to all the Bonds. Here and gone. It's just an iconic character, and I could probably do that as well. James Bond. Then we have to figure out which Bond, right? Maybe there's like a famous hat Bond. I don't know if James Bond wore a hat. I don't think he did. If he did, it might have been in this when he was in disguise. But anyway, yeah, that is all I had for you guys. What else? What else am I going to mention? Obviously, we talked about the hat giveaway. I think I'm at 52 subscribers. I don't have the hat with me, but I will be back home later this week. So for Hat Tuesday number 8, FYI, right? So the next show will be Hat Tuesday number 8, unless I decide I'm going to do a show in between, like a hat chat. The next show will be Hat Tuesday number 8. FYI, like I mentioned early in the stream, it's going to be a nod to the discussion that we started on this past Tuesday on traditional versus artistic, the festival hats, right? That's the topic that Josh and Robert are kind of like inspired. We're gonna try to get Robert Galt back on. He wasn't, we couldn't get him on successfully, but hopefully between all of us, right? He's now part of the board of directors, the Luke board of directors, and hopefully we'll get Robert, Paul, and whoever else, Josh, whoever you got wants to join and wants to be part of that discussion, either on screen or in the chat, and then we'll continue that discussion, and we'll go into hopefully the main topic, which is the evolution of headwear or hatwear or whatever we have you. And I'll have to kind of do a little bit of research on that, but I look forward to doing that for you guys. Like I always mention, like and subscribe for the channel, right? I'd say that ad nauseum. A lot of you guys already went and supported Paul. You can go and hit the like button on this, right? Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you have subscribed to myself and to Paul and to Josh's channel, as well as to Kevin Gerber's channel. And I'm not sure if Robert has a channel, but if he has one, then you can subscribe to his channel. Just to support your hat people, right? Steve Goldstein, right? Like if hit him up on Facebook, drop him a line, because man, Steve is. And if you're in the New York area, right? If you're watching this and you're in New York City, maybe you're visiting, maybe you already live in New York City for some reason you haven't visited Bencraft Hatters. I recommend it, man. Go. Steve and his staff, right? I met Boris, a gentleman that works there, that works at Bencraft. I didn't meet Bill. Bill was off that day, but all I already know is that shop is someplace, right? It's Hat Church, right? Like if you're not very religious and you're comfortable with the idea of a hat church, Morgan, I think, said it really best. Like, this is like Hat Church. I really felt like the reverence in that. And the history. Again, even though that shop itself wasn't the same shop that existed right when Bancraft first started, but it has that feel, right? When when you enter a shop that you're like, okay, if these walls could talk, right? You know what I mean? These walls could talk. There would be so many stories, and maybe that's what we'll do. We'll get Steve on here, or maybe I'll just head over to New York. The next time I head on New York, I'll just stop by Steve's place. we'll do another show and we'll get some stories, right? And maybe we can add Kevin, right? Kevin, I already know hat stories. He's shared it on his channel. Shout out to Kevin at Hats and Guitars. You know, he worked over at JJ Hat Center, and he's had great stories, man. That's the thing, the retail side, right? Where the rubber meets the road. That's a fascinating, right? We get the Hatter side, then the retail side with Steve and with Bencraft, you know, Steve at Bencraft with Kevin Gerber, as well as somebody like Meyer the Hatter, right? Meyer the Hatter's 101, I think now, or 102. I think he's in his hundreds, and he's over in Louisiana. I've never met him, but if I'm ever in his neck of the woods, I'm gonna introduce myself. I'm gonna go check it out. If you're in Cincinnati, you can go to Batsaki's. I don't know the folks their names, but Batsaki is a very old hat shop in Cincinnati, and you know, I fully intend to do a tour. It's just a matter of making the time. You know, there's no excuse. You know what I mean? Everybody's busy. You know, I'm busy. You're busy. Everybody's busy. But we need to make time for the things that matter, right? The people that matter, the things that matter, and the ideas that matter, right? The thoughts that matter. So that's about it. That's what I'm gonna leave you. You know, like I said, support, like, and subscribe. But even if you don't, right? You see where I'm getting at, right? You know, we already seen what Vito Corleone can do, right? Like he's gonna say, he's gonna be like this, right? Use your brain, right? Use your or maybe he's just saying use your finger, right? To like click, right? Just click and like and subscribe, right? But you know, even if you don't, right? Even if you don't go and like the video, you don't subscribe, I will go and I will use Vito to send you the message to tell you, stay hatting, my friends. Have a great day. Have a great Friday. Ciao. Bye, everybody.